January 28th, 2025, meeting of the Dover School Committee, Sherborn School Committee, and Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee. My name is Jeff Cassidy, and I call this meeting to order at 6:31. We are here at the middle school, which we are also available on Zoom, and this meeting is being recorded by DSC TV for us. And our first agenda item is community comments. So do we have any community comments on Zoom, as I do not see any community members here in person?
No.
Nobody on.
All right. If we have nobody on Zoom for community comments, we can move to the next agenda item, which is our superintendent comments.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Before I get started, I just want to introduce some faces that you may or may not know, but you'll be hearing from them this evening. We have Brandon Hall, our Director of Educational Technology, with us. Kate McCarthy, Director of Student Services. Ellen Rowley, Director of Guidance. And you all know Dawn and Denny, of course. The first item that I was going to discuss is just an update on district and superintendent goals for the year. And I just want to mention that none of what I'm going to talk about this evening is possible without the folks that I just introduced and the principals and the educators. I can't do this work alone. I just end up being the face of it and being able to tell you about all the good work that the district's doing. Nothing in the update should be new to you. There's things that I've been talking about for the last few months. It's just documented in one nice clean place for you now as you enter the evaluation process. But in terms of goals for the district, there's 3 district goals this year. The first is continuing to implement the 9 best practices as a way of having a common vision for what teaching and learning should look like in all K-12 classrooms. We are, as you know, this summer we identified look-fors. So when you go into a classroom and you want to see the best practice of voice or the best practice of relevance, what is the teacher doing, what are the students doing, and what is the task that everybody's working on, so that we can provide feedback to educators, see these things in action, and continue to bring them to fruition for our students. The second is around student voice. And making sure that we have an opportunity to hear from the kids. That was evident this summer when we invited 30 of our students to the leadership retreat and the instructional leadership retreat and had them spend the day with us to unpack challenge success data and kind of give life to the numbers that we were seeing. And I think the highlight that you often hear Denny and I talk about now is our student advisory council that we get to meet with on early release days, and just what a joy they are to talk to interact with, to hear their real life stories, and then to get feedback from. The third goal is around streamlining communication tools. As you know, we've rolled out Parent Square. In a little bit, I'll give you some data from the survey that I just sent out, and then Brandon will be talking more about it in his presentation. And then in terms of my professional and student learning goals, the first is to work with our evaluators on calibrating and refining the feedback that we give to educators to make sure that we are focused on the 9 best practices, so all of our boats are rowing in the same direction, and to make sure that we're giving constructive actionable feedback to our educators relative to them. And then the second is continuing to interact with my job alikes, whether that's through the Tech Collaborative or the Leading Now program, which is nationwide, but having an opportunity to work with other superintendents who are dealing with like problems, different problems, but really filling my toolbox with additional strategies on how to deal with difficult situations and make progress in the district. Any questions on the goals update? No? Okay. So in addition to the goals, you all evaluate me on the 4 standards in the superintendent's rubric. The first one being instructional leadership. So that includes looking at curriculum instruction assessments. That's all the collaborative work I do with Denny, all the visits that I do with classroom principals, and supporting and evaluating the principals to then support and evaluate the teachers. The second strand is management and operations. So that's really collaborating with Dawn, working on our safety drills and the health and well-being of our students with Kate and Ellen. Personnel, the hiring, dealing with personnel matters, and the budget development and management process, which you all know very well. The third standard is around family and community engagement. So it's, again, interacting with all stakeholders, making sure their voices are heard and integrated into our strategic plan, and then working on communication, which, again, you'll hear more about this evening. And the fourth strand is professional culture. So that's really taking the strategic plan that was developed by all stakeholder groups and working collaboratively with people to develop initiatives, make progress, reach our goals. It's leading the leadership team meetings that we have every other week with all of our district administrators, conflict resolution, and lots more other things. So you have the goals, which are new and different. This is kind of the everyday work. And then what's not included up here are the things that pop up as surprises that, sometimes keep us busy. Right, any questions before I move on? Okay, I'm sure you all saw yesterday the email that I sent out addressing students' rights and protections. So as you know, Andrea Campbell, our Attorney General, just provided guidance for K-12 schools in terms of how to support all of our students in the current climate. I've also gotten a number of questions from parents and community members about how we can support students and families. So in that email, you saw that I referenced a number of our documents that are in place either as a district or as a state, which continue to give us guidance moving forward. The fact that we cannot discriminate against any subgroup of people or students based on their identity. So we will continue to offer a free and appropriate public education, and a rigorous one for that matter, to all of our students here in Dover-Sherborn and our Metco students. We do not know the immigration status of our students. We do not collect that during the enrollment process. And so there's no way for us to know unless a student or a family shares that with us, which would obviously be confidential information. Our school grounds cannot be accessed by federal agents unless they have a judge-signed court order to do so. We've talked to all of our administrators and our front office staff, so we're prepared should there be a visit and how to handle that. But we're pretty confident that that won't happen, and we are prepared if it does. Student records, as you know, are confidential. We cannot share that information with anyone, again, without a court order or the permission of a parent or guardian, so that is safe here on campus. And I did share with all families some plan ahead resources should they need to use them or share them with other loved ones or neighbors. We also have in place, and you heard a lot about this during our DEI work and the equity audit, are the DESE guidelines that were provided to all Massachusetts schools in terms of creating a safe and supportive environment for our LGBTQ population of students. We will continue to follow those guidelines relative to pronouns, to access to bathrooms, etc. So none of that is changing. Any questions there? Nope. Okay.
One quick question.
Yes.
Have we seen any impacts negative to our attendance at this point?
No.
Or is it hard to tell because of all the flu that's going around?
Yes.
Having just been subject to that recently.
Yeah, no, there is a lot of illness going around, and I think we have every strand of possible germ going through the system. So it's hard to tell, but we haven't heard any stories through guidance or the nurses or anything of situations that we should be concerned about aside from health.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I also want to mention that the directory that's online through Parent Square, you have to opt into, so it's not automatic that your home address and phone number are shared. And we are providing through our school newsletters. Brandon has a video about how to opt in and then how to opt out if people change their mind. And also in our school newsletters, we're going to remind people that they have the opportunity to go into Aspen and update contact information, emergency contact information, should they need to do that. And if they're not technological savvy, they can certainly work with our main offices to get that done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so going back up to the 30,000-foot view, as you know, Denny and I spent 3 days in the summer at the Massachusetts Association of Superintendents Conference with all of our peers, and he and I presented this past year. There is a midwinter meeting that they have to bring us all together again, kind of halfway through the year, and that happened last Thursday. We had 3 really incredible speakers for the morning. And I left there just so inspired and overwhelmed at the same time. And then came back to, and then there's this, and this that we have to do too. But the first was Andrea Campbell was there, and she did give us a little bit of an overview of that was going to be coming out about student immigration status. But she also talked to us about her concerns around cell phones and how it's likely that the Massachusetts legislation is going to come forward with a decree called the bell-to-bell no cell phone policy. So what that means is students, K-12, would not have access to their phones from one bell at the beginning of the day to the other bell at the end of the day. What does that mean for Dover-Sherborn? Well, we're already moving in that direction. As you know, our elementary school students do not bring their phones to school. The middle school, you're all familiar with the Yonder pouches. If you're not, ask a middle schooler and they'll tell you all about it. And then at the high school, yes, they do have access to their phones in between classes and at breaks, but during instructional time, they're away in the cell hotels unless they're directed otherwise to be able to use them. We might want to look at that as a community, and so that's something that we'll engage in conversation with John Smith, the principal, and his leadership team as to how we move forward. And that conversation I know is happening in a lot of high schools, so we'll continue to work and collaborate with them. Dr. Jill Walsh from Boston University presented on social media. Has anybody seen her speak yet? Okay, good, because I hope to have her come here. She spoke in Medfield just before Thanksgiving, and there was something happening in the district here, too, that we weren't able to go. But she is absolutely phenomenal. She talked about how cell phones or social media is just running counter to what we know about adolescence from a psychological point of view, and that kids need unstructured time with their peers and time to reflect and grow. And when they're glued to their telephone, unfortunately, none of that's happening. She talked about the impact on mental health, which we're all well aware of. The social comparisons that happen, you compare and despair between everybody you're seeing online, whether it's a real image or not. She talked about the loss of your inner self, how some kids can't be alone anymore because they're used to always being connected. So you'll hear kids who are taking a shower listening to a Netflix movie because they just can't hear silence and just can't be left by themselves. She talked about how kids have become counselors to their peers and being a support even in dangerous or stressful situations, and what kind of an onus that is on our adolescents. And then access to harmful identities. She did talk about the positive identities where groups of kids can find others like themselves online that maybe they don't have in their class or in their school system, but there's also so many negative identities that students can become involved with and kind of take a dark route. She talked about social media being okay in moderation, which most things are okay in moderation. But she said, before we take the phones away, we have work to do. We need buy-in from the parent community, in addition to what the schools are doing. And I'll talk about that in a minute. We have to make sure that students can regulate their emotions on their own, that they have coping strategies, because oftentimes they use their phones to cope and hide and just unplug from everything. We have to work on students' social skills, which we've been doing double down since the pandemic, but we need to continue to do that. She told a great story, and I don't want to take her talk away because I probably would owe her money. But she talked about how one of her own kids said that there is a trend on TikTok where all of the teenagers are watching videos of teens from the 1990s, who many of us were teens in the 1990s, and they're like just fascinated watching us function in the 1990s because we actually were like close to each other and we made eye contact and we talked, and it's like a totally different breed of person. She's like, this is just strange that they don't understand what we're used to doing, and it shows that stark difference between their world and the world that we grew up in. And of course, we need to work on building resiliency. And one of my children is guilty of this too, but being able to, connect with mom anytime during the day. Mom, I got a 90 on this test, or Mom, what should I do about this? The kids need to be independent and problem solve on their own without having that constant connection. So we have things to do. And she also mentioned a website that she is behind but had lots of help building. It's called Your Brain on Social Media. And I'll make sure I share that out to the community, but definitely a great resource for parents. This coincides with the panel that was held last week at the Sherborn Community Center, focused on the community-wide rate of anxious generation. I was there. I know you were all there in spirit. But it was great. There was a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, and then actually Kate Potter was on the panel as a school committee member, understanding our policies, and as a mom who's lived through it. And they talked about their takeaways from the books. Reverend Hudson was there, who is a fabulous resource for our community. And so it's nice to know that we can partner with him and his group as we do work as a school and kind of bring us all together around this topic of social media. So for next steps, I'm recommending that we get Jill Walsh to come and speak with us, because she really is engaging and powerful and has so many, statistics to offer, but also solutions. And also, after Jill kind of lays the groundwork, have a panel of law enforcement officials and legal counsel come and do a panel about what this looks like when things get ugly, and how we need to protect our children in those circumstances. And then once we're kind of informed about that angle of things, have a small task force of parents and educators come together and develop community norms about social media and how the school is going to manage it, and then how we can partner with parents to manage things at home. Just like SPAN DS, not everybody's going to buy into the, not serving alcohol at home in your basement. Not everybody's going to buy into the community norms around social media. However, for those who do, at least they have power in numbers to say, we're not going to get a cell phone till 8th grade. You're not going to have a cell phone when you go to bed. And you can have some power through your peers. So those are things coming up. And the third speaker is Dr. Cynthia Brazel from MIT, who you've heard Danny talk about artificial intelligence. You'll hear Brandon talk about it. She just blew me away in terms of how far MIT already is down the road in terms of thinking about how artificial intelligence can impact education. She gave us some videos of elementary students interacting with AI robots in order to learn to read and learn social skills. It was cool, but a little scary at the same time. But she talked about the opportunity that AI brings for empowerment. So we need to empower kids and educators with this tool, and we need to mitigate the risks of it because, as you know, it's running away from us very quickly in terms of what it's capable of doing. She reminded us that we need to educate our students. It's not just reading literacy anymore and writing literacy. It's AI literacy and fluency. And so MIT is working with the Department of Education in Massachusetts to develop a curriculum K-12 so that we're not creating the wheel in Dover-Sherborn and then Medfield's creating the wheel and Wellesley's creating the wheel, but ways that we can integrate AI literacy and fluency into math, science, social studies, history, all the way K through 12. So that should be coming down the pike. Any questions on those things?
So the bell-to-bell, I know it takes like 7 years for a piece of legislation in Massachusetts to actually get through. Even if they run it through, it should be interesting to take into effect. We just spent all this money on under pouches, and they could be relegated negligent, so that could be a budget thing we might need to get rid of potentially. Right?
Well, no,
so
they're actually solving the problem because.
No, what I'm saying is, if they just say you can't have it at all,
oh,
the under pouches may go away because there's not even one in the school. So I'm just saying there could be budget implications.
Well, bell to bell though, you can still bring to have it on the way home or.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Dawn can sleep at night knowing that we did make a good.
I saw that.
decision.
And I was thinking the same thing, but I think it's still a way to, because we still have parents who say my child needs to go to school with their phone for some reason after the bell.
After the bell,
or
right.
after the bell. So.
Right. And we're also noticing, we can talk about this for 45 minutes and we won't, that a lot of the 6th graders have come into school this year having had these conversations ahead of time with the middle school administration and knowing that the under pouches were coming down the pike. A lot of 6th graders don't have cell phones, or at least they're not bringing them to school. So there's been kind of this empowerment of parents to say, no, you don't need to have a cell phone, and not everybody has a cell phone. So it's slowly, I think, taking root, which is great for our community. All right. Now on to the next piece. And again, we're going to pick up this later with Kate because we are 2 years out from the last time that we updated our bullying prevention and intervention plan. And so we will have you look at an update this evening and provide feedback as your first read. But in terms of the prevention and the overall programming, I just wanted to share with folks what we do for those who are new to the table. In terms of student education, at the elementary level, we have counselors going in and doing lessons with our students around name calling, differences, and bullying. And at the secondary level, we have further, deeper lessons around bullying, cyberbullying, relationships, conflict resolution, etc. So we do weave that into our curriculum in a number of different places. Our educators and administrators are trained at least once a year. So staff have to do mandatory training in August when they come around being mandated reporters, around suicide prevention, and around bullying. So that's something that we all do together in August. Our administrators every year go through a legal update as to what's changing in the legal world relative to education. This year we had them pay particular attention to bullying prevention and laws around when it happens, how to investigate, how to report, and what to do next. So we really kind of muscled up around bullying this year. And then Kate and our assistant principals are going to be attending a workshop through the Mass Partnership for Youth in February to go dig deeper into investigating and reporting and supporting students who may be victims of bullying. The processes and protocols, Kate, as our kind of point person, has been working with all 4 schools that if there is a report of bullying, she works with them to investigate the case, to complete the procedures, do all the reporting that needs to happen, communicate with all of the families and individuals involved so that we're making sure that all 4 buildings are approaching it in a systematic, thorough way. And we upload annually all of our data to DESE, and they monitor bullying statistics in each of the schools. And so Kate most recently was working with our data specialist to make sure that what we're entering into the system is translating properly so that the state can see that information. And then they take the actual incidents of bullying that's happening within our district and compare it to the survey that students take after they take the MCAS, which is called the vocal survey, where they talk about, they answer questions as to whether they've been bullied and how often, and they're there to provide supports for districts who need it. Next steps, tonight we'll update the district prevention and intervention plan. You'll have your first read and you'll have your second read at your next individual meetings. And then we are on a cycle with DESE for all different kinds of reviews, and many of you have sat through it, whether it's civil rights or whether it's special education or lots of different things. But next year we are scheduled for the civil rights review, which includes harassment and bullying. So we will have members from DESE here on campus. We will have to provide them lots of different documents ahead of time to review. Then they will come here and actually look through our documents on campus, get a feel for our schools, hold focus groups of folks to understand what life is like on the ground. And then if there are any areas where we are not meeting the expectation laid out by the state, we would have a corrective action plan that we would need to address moving forward. Questions on that? Now, I'm a little bit all over the place, but I apologize. Communication survey. So we had 136 people respond so far. I will resend it out just as one last reminder. Interesting, I didn't put all of the data up there because we're still processing it, but 58% of parents and caregivers indicate that they still communicate with educators through email, 38% through Parent Square, and the rest through phone and notes. So we still have a lot of people who send that communication, that longer communication through email, which is fine. Frequency of newsletters, which is not up there either. Classroom and schools, parents like to have a combination of one or the other, about once a week. District newsletters, they're hoping for either monthly or quarterly. And parent groups, there's a wide range of responses, and I think that's because some parents groups, communicate more often than others, and that's just what we've become accustomed to. And then in terms of accessing the website, it sounds like they primarily use our brand new, beautiful website to access the calendar and the Aspen portal to log into SIS. Otherwise, I think a lot of people are finding what they need on Parent Square. Okay, so what do we have up here? So I access Parent Square via, and you'll see most of the respondents said they're using the app to do that. Others follow the link they receive either through text or email. A lot of people check Parent Square daily or every couple days. Some less regularly than that. A lot of people don't really go to our website anymore, either rarely, never, or monthly, because they're getting their information otherwise, which was part of the plan, although we spent a lot of time and energy on creating the website. That said, we got a lot of feedback that our website is fairly average in terms of the information available, the ease of navigation, the website organization. So we can dig deeper into that, and I'm not sure what the other 600 respondents do to provide information would say. And then other questions were, what would you like on the website that's not there? And this was interesting. People really wanted access to teacher emails. However, when we put staff emails on the website, can you imagine what happens? Our spam and our advertisement and our emails go through the roof because people just download it and becomes part of their PR and marketing system. So it's really hard to do that. And guess what? Through Parent Square, all you have to do is go to your kid's profile and you start to type in the name, and there goes whatever person you want to message. So that's hopefully the solution there. Parents and caregivers want to know more about the METCO program, so we can perhaps make that more prominent on the website. Access to upcoming events, which we can make sure that that's live, coming from our calendars. And then curriculum by grade, which I know is something that the assistant superintendent is working on. Next steps regarding Parent Square, and this is something that Brandon will partner with us on, is to minimize the verbiage in our communications. So not having full paragraphs, but kind of break it down to bullets and bold and highlights and just get the information out there quick so people can just breeze right through it. Brandon, I know you've tried really hard to help people turn off there are multiple notifications. We got to keep pushing that. I don't know how to get it done. Maybe you just need to pull up a chair at Dunkin' Donuts, but
Consider it done.
people are very frustrated that they're getting emails and texts and notifications on their apps. So. Interesting feedback for Parent Square, and Brandon is in touch with them often because, as you know, they continue to develop their program and their product. They have a to-do list, and we've offered many suggestions to that to-do list. So the next suggestion, Brandon, if they haven't heard it already, is that parents would like an opportunity or a mechanism to archive, categorize, and flag messages instead of having to go through them all the time.
Plus one.
Just a way to organize the posts. And then we can look at what's posted up there. I will say when you go to the website and you sit in front of a whole computer, you see a lot more than you do on your tiny cell phone screen. There are places where you can post pictures and links. Parents are asking for links to the high school rotation schedule, the payment portal for various payments, and our lunch menu. So we can make sure that that's somewhere. It's just hard to see it on your 3x5 screen.
So one thing I've noticed some people do and some people don't when they post is a direct add to calendar link. And if you don't do it, then you have to cut and paste to put something on your calendar. I don't know if that's a standard they could do. That's an option, just add to calendar.
Yeah.
The CSA does that quite a bit, and I can just add things to my calendar.
Good feedback. Any other? Yeah.
Is the plan to keep Aspen portal up and running, or is that going to be phased out?
Yeah, so that has an entirely different function, and that's where we maintain all our student records and student information, so it has to be different,
Okay.
unfortunately. And I know it's clunky to log in, and I know it's clunky to do the verification process. I do it too, but it is what it is for right now.
Okay.
Luckily, we weren't a power school district because, as you know, their information was breached a couple weeks ago, so we dodged that. But we, no system's perfect yet. We'll get there.
Even hackers can't figure out Aspen.
I'm gonna write that one
down. When the kids talk about it, they're like, "That is the most unuser-friendly platform known to man." But it is what it is. I'm sure Brandon will fix it during his tenure.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else on communication or Parent Square? All right, moving on to more teaching and learning. Here we go, Denny. We're about to transition. So feedback that Denny and I received during our entry process when we met with students, teachers, administrators, parents, community members about what's going well in Dover-Sherborn and what needs to change or move in a different direction. We heard a lot about just the wonderful, amazing educators we have in our district, but that there is currently only one piece of glue that holds together the curriculum K-12 across 8 subjects, and that's Denny. And while we have department chairs at the high school, curriculum leaders at the middle school, PLC leaders and coaches at the elementary level, he's the only one that kind of bridges the gap. And he can only spin so many plates at one time and be in so many places to provide support. So one of the requests was to look at our instructional leadership model and see if it's robust enough and if there's tweaks that we can do to kind of make those through lines more obvious and improve teaching and learning for all of our kids. So we have engaged Athena, which is a consulting firm made up of current and former principals, assistant superintendents who do this work. Denny and I would love to do this work. We just don't have the bandwidth. But we've partnered with them, and they are going to do a professional learning study for us. They're going to look at our instructional leadership model. They're going to talk to us about our supervision and evaluation process of how we give feedback to educators and the professional development that we offer and how we offer it. And they're going to do that through 3 mechanisms. They're doing research on what the world of education and science says is the best way to approach these things. They've looked at 6 comparable districts to see what their models look like for these things and what we might be able to learn from them. And they're going to be engaging in focus groups. So Friday, Monday, Tuesday, they'll be on campus meeting with administrators, meeting with department chairs, curriculum leaders, PLC leaders, all faculty, union leadership, central office, to kind of talk about the pros and cons of these areas, and then bring it all together, the research, the comparable district information, and our feedback to say, here's what's working well, and here's areas where, as a district you can improve, and here's some recommendations, take them or leave them. So I just wanted to give you a heads up about that. And lastly, I just wanted to provide some course updates. I think what was really inspiring, I think Denny was probably the only person I texted. I could have texted all of you, but you probably don't want to see my edu nerd text during the day. But when I was at MASS at the conference last week, and we were talking about, actually it's in here. Hang on, wait for it. We were talking about artificial intelligence. One of the slides that the woman from MIT put up was this one, which shows the skills that our students are going to need entering the workforce in the next 25 years. And I looked at those skills and I was like, oh my goodness, that's the portrait of a graduate of Dover-Sherborn students. You know, we got it right. And so that really inspired me to think about the work that we've been doing for the last 6 years. And she also talked about constructivist learning, about putting the kids in the classroom, doing the hard work, figuring out the patterns and making sense of the material as opposed to just giving it to them and asking them to give it back to us. So I was like, all right, we're on the right track. That said, we are offering a new business course this year. And we have 4 classes running for the business course. It's a semester-based course taught by Mr. Noah Schultz. And they are absolutely loving it for their, what is a full course midterm, but their final at the end of semester 1. They had to develop a product and then engage in an actual Shark Tank with members of the administration and community members who might be in business and marketing and have to defend and talk about their products. Some were awarded money, some weren't. And many of them have gone on to compete in DECA, for those of you who know the DECA program. Both Mr. Smith and Mr. O'Mara judged the last round of competitions. I'm not sure what level that was, but Denny and I just got invited to judge the next level, which is at the end of January at Seaport. Filling out that application to volunteer was like filling out a tax form. It was the craziest thing. And just all the levels of things that I don't understand because I'm not in business marketing, but I tried to. And so that's super exciting. But it brought me to think about the new courses that we have. And so just taking kind of a step back to say, how have we grown as a district towards this portrait of a graduate, towards these 21st century skills in the last few years? Here's some of the new courses that we've started offering in the last 5 years at the high school. So we have 2 AP computer science courses that run for the full year. The other ones are semester-based classes. We have financial literacy, forensic science, TV media we've had, but it's transitioned into a project-based internship class where students actually engaged in the community and business partners. Web design has been revamped with our new educators. The iOS AMP has been revamped thanks to our new educators. I've talked about business. Music theory kind of comes and goes, but there's been an uptick lately, which I think speaks a lot to our art department. Intro to acting too has been something that we've offered, and all of a sudden now there's interest. Moving forward, we have tech trends and ethics with a capital CS for computer science rolling out next year. And what that is doing is taking 2 of our former classes, social media lit and tech and society, and bridging them together and kind of advancing them to be more current. We have an intersections course coming on board this fall, which, hang on to that thought. And then a year from now, hopefully, we'll finally have a robotics course up and running. So lots of things to show the portrait of a graduate in action, and that we are preparing our kids for the future. MIT would be proud of us.
When do these classes become available? Like, what grade are they able to start looking at some of these?
Typically, sophomore year is when you can start to pick up kind of the computer science classes. Web design, iOS app could be freshman year as your electives. But then, there's priority towards upperclassmen, so getting into business and forensic science, you typically have to be a junior, senior to get into them. Okay. But it's really important that now, and I remember this from my days of high school, to really plan out your 4 years because you have so many slots and so many options. And so really thinking about what you want to do and how you want to spend your time. I know my son is a junior looking at senior year, and he made a list of all the classes he wants, which excites me because he actually wants to take classes. But he doesn't have enough slots for everything he wants to do. I'm like, that's a nice problem to have. But the intersections course, I just wanted to mention, for those of you who are on the Academic Innovation Committee or have been following along for the last several years, we've been talking about having an interdisciplinary course similar to Wellesley. They have a program. Concord Carlisle is the longest standing program. And Needham has a program as well. And basically what it does is it takes a group of students together and has them together for a chunk of time. In our case, it'll be 2 periods. It'll be taught by 2 teachers, an English teacher and an art teacher. And it's an interdisciplinary course. So in addition to English and art, they're also going to be pulling in social studies and science. And they're tackling big questions, not a unit on, cell function and not a unit on this, but instead here are the questions. They have thematic units throughout the year: identity and community, place and journeys, living and dying, money and power, responsibility and progress, passions and needs. And so these students will get, it takes up 2 blocks of their schedule. So it is a commitment, but they get English credit, and then they get elective credit through the art program. They can take AP Lit in addition to it if they have room in their schedule. And taking this course would prepare them to take the AP Lit exam if they want to. They'll have gathered the skills throughout, so if that's something that they're interested in, that'll be a possibility. You can take this class and either get CP credit or honors credit, so it'll be a mix of students together, and the expectations will just be differentiated. It's project-based, so not paper and pencil test. Each unit has a project. Each unit has a field trip out into the field relative to these topics, and each unit has community members coming in to share their experience relative to these topics. So everything that we've dreamed about for the last few years is coming to fruition. We're hoping that it gets off the ground. Denny and I talked about this with the Guidance Advisory Council last week. Thanks to Ellen, there was a lot of excitement in the room, and there was a comment from one of our GAC parents, which was the same comment that Lynn Collins, former school committee member, said like 4 years ago. Well, isn't this how all of our classes should be? And we're like, yes, and this is step 1. So stay tuned. The 2 teachers who are teaching this course, Kelly Manise in the English department and Carly Blaze from art, are hoping to come join a meeting and tell you more about it coming forward. Your turn.
Oh, goodness. Do you have any questions? Kristen, are you there? I feel bad. So my quick updates. So it seems like forever ago, because the month of January has been going on forever, that it was December 2nd, which was our full day of professional development. So I just want to share some updates on what that day of professional development was like. So at the elementary level, no surprise, we focused on math. We were really lucky to have a guest speaker come in. His name is John Sangiovanni. He is a curriculum supervisor in Maryland, but he also helped write Reveal. So he's an expert on the math, and he talked about 2 different things on that day. The first thing he talked to our educators about was productive struggle. So he went through the 6 actions for productive math struggle. He had us engage in productive struggle using tangrams, and we kind of used our own experiences to talk about what struggle brings you as a learner, which was a really powerful experience. He also talked about the importance of having really well-constructed tasks in our math curriculum. So things that aren't just about memorizing procedure, aren't just about fact fluency, but things that are building understanding, things that are building conceptual understanding. And he gave a couple examples. One of them, which I thought was really interesting, was looking at the cereal Lucky Charms and asking them if the ratio of marshmallow pieces to cereal pieces is different in the different sizes that you can get. So there's a really great lesson for students on ratios, on fractions, on percentages. And the spoiler alert is that it's the same ratio for all of them, but if you go to a different brand, so there's like a Marshmallow Adventures, more generic brand, that has the highest amount of marshmallows in it to cereal pieces. So I bet you didn't think you were going to learn that today. But, he gave us as an example of things that kids can really get into, and they're practicing the math, and they see the relevance right away. So we talked about the tasks that we are asking our elementary students to pursue in math. He talked about the importance of building efficacy. So in a lot of the research, John Hattie's research, it shows that efficacy, kind of your belief in yourself and your confidence in your abilities, have the biggest impact on your ability to learn. And one of the things that builds efficacy is when you face a challenge, when you confront a problem, and you work to solve it. So he said that, in teaching, a lot of times teachers feel like the marker of a successful lesson is that by the end of the lesson, every student understands. And he said sometimes that's not the case. You want the students to be struggling with something, and you want them to not have the answer by the end of the period. So he said this notion of productive struggle sometimes runs counterintuitive to how teachers see a productive or successful lesson going. So he talked about that. He talked about the idea of the importance of reflection on math and having our students think about how their math experience was. So he gave this example of 9 pictures that you could put up, and you ask your students at the end of the math lesson, which one of these pictures represented how you felt today during our math lesson. And if you look really close, some students would say the ducks in this picture because it felt like everybody was watching me today during math. The elephant in the picture because I didn't think I could do it, but I kept trying. The girl in the picture because I felt like I was the only one who didn't get something and I was alone on a bench. So this idea of the reflection and the metacognition at the end of a math lesson. In the afternoon, the focus was on problem solving. So he talked about the difference between routine problem solving and non-routine problem solving. Non-routine problem solving being marked by having multiple ways to solve or go about solving the problem, that they elicit sense-making and creative thinking, and they develop students' mathematical reasoning power. And he said there's a place for both of these types of problems in math classrooms, but having that variety is really important. He talked about this idea that problem solving is more so a circle than a line. Problems don't fall into neat boxes, and some of the pitfalls that we have when we're teaching math is that we try to give students predictable procedures, and it's really challenging for students if they can't remember the exact steps that a teacher laid out to solve a problem. So it shows that there's only one way to think. It creates frustration for students, can lead to destructive struggle. So making sure that you're having word problems that have multiple ways that they could be approached and that don't follow a set procedure is the best way to get students' mathematical thinking going. So that was a really great day at the elementary level. We had our special educators with us for that day. And again, like most things this year, all things math at the elementary level. Last thing he talked about too was the idea of logic games. So you might have heard students talking about these. But things like Connect 4, like simple little games like Mancala, and how they connect to mathematical thinking and how these can seem fun and like games for kids, but they're developing these mathematical thinking skills that we want our students to develop. The secondary level had a different flavor that day, so we started the day with a choice board. So Superintendent McCoy and I have tried to be very intentional about modeling the best practices for our staff. So this was one of the ways that we tried to model choice and voice for them. So they had a choice board. They had two parts of it. In the morning, they got to choose either a podcast or an article to read. Some of it was about individualization of instruction. Some was related to thinking routines. Once they did that, they filled out a little Google form talking about what they learned and how they were going to implement it in their classrooms. And then they had a choice of different activities they could do. They could get onto Magic School, which is our AI school resource, and tinker around with that. They could work on communication and send positive emails home to parents and caregivers, positive emails to students saying things that they were doing well. Then we had some other activities around collaboration and the best practices. So it was a nice opportunity for them to really kind of choose their own adventure for the morning portion. And then in the afternoon, we gave our curriculum leaders and our department heads the task of building something specifically for the needs of their teachers. So these are just some examples of things that various departments were participating in. So the high school history and the high school English department had ed tech teacher come in and do a session with them on engineering effective AI prompts. At the high school level in math, we had building thinking classrooms come in and talk to our math educators about different ways to teach math and to make it student-centered. At the middle school level, we're right now going through a visioning process and trying to establish what our vision in Dover-Sherborn for middle school math is. So they were working on that during that day. High school science had Lab Safety Institute training, which was very interesting just to think about the safety aspects of the lab work that our students were doing. Middle school science had the Wade Institute come in, and they did a session on phenomena-based learning. One of the great things about having our PD Day after the Thanksgiving break is that not a lot of other districts have their PD Day. So this year we took advantage of that, and we had our technology, engineering, and arts teachers all visit different schools to see various programs. So the teachers found these site visits to be really powerful. going to Hopkinton, Burlington, Bellingham, Natick, Wayland, Pembroke, thanks to Brandon. But going and seeing various music programs in Wayland, going to Pembroke and looking at mixed media and how that can be implemented in the classroom. So it was great for our educators to see different school districts, and then our world languages department used a consultancy protocol to think about just problems of practice they had, and as a whole department, ways that they could support their colleagues, which I thought was a really great way for them to spend their time. So that was what secondary did. My final big updates for teaching and learning as of now. So we obviously are continuing the implementation of Reveal at our elementary level K through 5. Our Sherborn and our Dover school committees are probably sick of hearing me talk about math and Reveal, but here it is. So we're doing our progress monitoring and gathering metrics to see how successful the program has been. We were lucky that we got a grant from the Department of Education to support this math implementation. So with that, we've been working with an organization called TNTP, and they've been meeting with our elementary math coaches, myself, our elementary building leaders, and we've put together a 5-year implementation plan for Reveal Math. So that we're not just kind of thinking short-sighted about this year or next year, but we're thinking about how this is going to evolve over 5 years. They've been going in and been doing walkthroughs in our classrooms and giving their observations of how the implementation is going. So it's been nice to have that extra support for the math implementation. We will be launching our program review of our elementary ELA programs. So next week, I'm going to be at faculty meetings talking to staff about this process. Then the week after, the community is going to receive a link to a survey to gather community feedback about what we value in an elementary ELA program. So look out for that. We're also going to be launching a program review of our elementary Spanish program. So the first class of FLES students is now juniors in high school, taking their last year of required world language. So we want to think about what were the goals of the program at the beginning, are they the same, and are we meeting those goals at the elementary level? So we're launching that program review. Middle school social studies is continuing with their pilot of investigating history in 6th and 7th grade and implementing the new civics project in 8th grade. Our high school history department is continuing to update their curriculum to try to bring us as close as we can to the present as possible. In our math department, it's very exciting. They're continuing their work with building thinking classrooms and thinking about other ways that they can be teaching math. So those are my updates. I'm happy to take any questions or comments people have.
Quick question on the FLES update for elementary, or the review of it. Is there a review of that continuity from elementary school to the middle school? Because that seems like where some of the breakdown is, because it's not continuous from somebody's been taking it in Dover or Sherborn from first grade on. It sounds like we sort of hit a reset button again in 6th grade, even though most kids, if not all, have already had a good foundation.
Yes, so part of the program review process is going to be talking to our middle school and our high school teachers to see the impact that the FLES program has had on their teaching. We're going to be looking at enrollment of Spanish throughout the different grade levels. So that will be wrapped into the program review.
I'm not going to comment on, but I'm excited that a ton of work for the math, but the ELA curriculum review, I think it's very important. When you looked at the MCAS scores, they're not pre-COVID for English language arts. I'd say it's better to use the nomenclature pre-Lucy Calkins, pre-units of studies. So I'm glad we're potentially moving on from that program, because I feel it's done a detriment to society. No blame, no shame, but I'm glad it's moving on from it.
Yep. We're going to spend next couple months gathering what is our criteria for an effective program, and then we're going to kind of measure that up against units of study, see if it meets our criteria that we've established, and if it does, then we continue on and make revisions. If it doesn't, then we go down the route of looking at other programs. So.
Do you have any more detail about the middle school math visioning process? Like, was that a one-day thing? Is it happening over the full year?
It's a great question. So that is a 3-day process. It might go to 4 days. So it's 2 early release days and the half day of the full day professional development. So there's been a lot of discussion about how the new elementary curriculum is going to impact the middle schoolers. And when we've been talking about the elementary stuff around building a positive math identity, productive struggle, open-ended questions, that is going to be a different type of student that our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers are going to get. So that led into a discussion with the math department of like, do we need a new curriculum? Should we be using Reveal at the middle school level? And we kind of backed things up and said, before we even talk about like a program, what do we actually envision, what are our values as a middle school math department for how we teach math and how students experience math? So we'll use that to then determine, like, do we need a new curriculum? Do we need to make changes to the existing curriculum? But that has been working with an outside consultant, a math director, and another district that's been working with our teachers.
Thank you.
All right. On we go.
All right, thank you both. So next item here is we had a couple of discussion items.
Oh, no, there's technology update still. We got
Sorry.
a couple more people. Sorry.
That was the general update. Sorry, moving on, we have the technology update. And Brandon is going to walk us through that.
So if I could just introduce Brandon one more time. Brandon is first year with us as our Director of Educational Technology, which is now a change as opposed to just wires and systems and technology infrastructure. He's also has a background as a history teacher and brings the educational component to this in terms of what should be happening in the classroom. Denny and I attended the department chairs meeting at the high school last week, and we were talking about the hiring process because, believe it or not, we're entering into the hiring season for next year. And one person made a comment just about how important a single hire can be in any one department, and they named Brandon as being just an incredible change for the district and the impact that one person has had across all 4 schools. So take it away, Brandon. Tell us what you're up to.
Thank you. The bar's high here. So just as an introduction of our team, this is the best group of people I've ever worked with on a technical standpoint. From a customer service standpoint, we try and focus on making sure that our users, who are our teachers and our students, are using the best technology they possibly can, that their downtime is as low as possible, that our network uptime is as high as possible. And Nick Jones and Kurt Benetti and Luke and Curtis Mahoney are some of the most fabulous technicians I've ever worked with. They're unbelievable at what they do, their response, their ability to talk to people, which if you've ever had an IT issue, you know that sometimes the IT people have some quirks, but we have very personable people, and they're quick to respond to things and get to the bottom of it. And the things that we are able to do in-house here are things that other districts cannot because of their skill sets. We have an incredible data manager, Karen Gibbs, who is on top of every last piece of data that goes through this district. And 2 really, really good integrators at the elementary school, Dave Gaffney at Chickering and Teresa Bienemy at Pine Hill. Planning lessons with students, working in small groups with them, coaching teachers, and doing all sorts of really fun stuff to engage students with technology as we get further towards, as they get through the upper elementary grades, into coding, into robots, to prepare them for middle school tech. So Parent Square. I myself am a parent. My 7th grader, I have a 7th grader and a 4th grader. And I wrote this down. These were the apps that we were following last year for when she was in 6th grade and my son was in 3rd grade. We had Seesaw, Facebook, email, Aspen, Google Classroom, printed materials that came home in a folder, sometimes my son, Blooms, Instagram, and occasionally the parent portal that they had at my daughter's school. So that's how we were getting information from our kids. My wife and I we're pretty savvy. We're pretty on top of our kids. We would miss things just based on that. My son's school district has moved to Parent Square. The difference is unbelievable. We get the notifications. I have my notifications set up. I can help anybody set up the notifications. I've made videos. I'll go to Dunkin' Donuts. Whatever. I'll make house calls. The notifications, when you get your notifications set onto, say, Digest, and you get them all at once at 6 p.m. for whatever's happening, all of that information is right there. There's no more going to the class Instagram page or the parent Facebook group or looking at announcements from the school on Aspen and trying to figure out when's the Spirit Day, what's the thing on Spirit Day that we need to focus on, where's the lunch menu. This has been, as a parent and as an educator, this has been a godsend. And I think we are now we're over the hump as far as getting people on board, which you'll see in a second. But the uses that we're seeing for Parent Square vary sort of by building. At the elementary school level, staff have been able to replace a lot of paper and instant communication back and forth there. At the secondary level, we have a great program that's part of Parent Square called Student Square, where the teacher can loop the parent and the student in on the conversation. So the equivalent of CCing the student on the email of hey, you did a great job on this project. We're really proud of you. Your parents should be really proud of you. That message can go to both the parent and the student. For Parent Square, the uses we're seeing right now, announcements and news, direct messages to families in small groups. If you are a member of the theater world here, you know that the theater users have become power users of Parent Square, and it's been great because they've showed us how to do some things, which has been fun. Notifications and alerts. We had an incident in Pine Hill today with the way the car flow was going to happen. A message was sent out. We knew that the message was sent out. We saw exactly who didn't get the message. There were 17 people who didn't get the text message. Everyone else was able to get it. And when we consulted with building leadership, we made the determination that the other pieces that were in place, would make sure that people went the right way that they were supposed to go. We're going to work on figuring out why those 17 people didn't get that notification. Group communications, sports teams jumped right in. Again, the activities, after-school activities, language translation, which I think is one of the biggest ones. The messages come translated automatically to whatever you have your phone set to. So if you're a Portuguese speaker, your messages are all coming in Portuguese, and we've trained our staff to make sure that they're using the proper graphics so they don't put a PDF in because a PDF won't get translated. Right? We have to make sure that we put text into the messages so that it gets translated on the device. And the user doesn't have to do anything to translate it. It automatically comes translated, which is a huge step up from a lot of other programs. Permission slips and forms. We had our first field trip from here. That was science. They went to the Science Museum and they used Parent Square to do the permission slips, all paperless, which was exciting. And then the directory information, which will be rolling out, the ability to opt into the directory instead of having to opt out. You go in and you can opt into the directory. It's very simple. There's about a 1 and 20-second video that we posted on the district page. It's pretty quick. It's just clicking the pencil next to your email or your phone number. And it's just email and phone numbers too. There's no physical house locations in there. So as far as successes go, we have a unified communication platform for families now. No more catching messages from all over the place. Full engagement of the community. We have 99+% of our community on Parent Square actively getting messages. We have families using email at 99% and texts at 97%. There's some more data coming up on this next slide that will make more sense there. The challenges that we faced, anytime you have to roll out something brand new at the start of a school year and say, this is the thing that we're using now, and also not know anyone's name was tough. So onboarding 450 staff was fun and exciting. It was a fun and exciting way to get to meet everybody. Navigation of a new communication platform, making sure we're sending it out the right way. We don't want to, make a mistake and all of those things. Providing on-the-fly professional development, people just popping by the office or calling us and saying, hey, can you come down and check this out? Doing pop-ins with faculty meetings, with PLC groups. And then, of course, the managing notifications and notification settings. That's been the biggest piece of feedback we've gotten. I just routinely tell people, set everything to Digest. Pick the communication method you would like, whether it's the app or the email or the text and set it to digest so that everything comes all at once at 6 o'clock at night. It's so much easier than getting bombarded daily with app notifications from all over the place. This graphic might be a little difficult to see from the back, but basically what we're looking at is at the high school level, 100% engagement, 912 parents, 615 students, 350 posts this month alone. And we're getting that same level of engagement at the elementary schools, which isn't necessarily the case when you look at parent communication tools. The high school level tends to fade right down to almost nothing. We're getting 829 posts. We've got 100% reach with 526 people. That's 100%. 100% reach with 761 people at the middle school. And we're pretty close with, where was it? We have one group of parents that we've had a hard time getting engaged with that we're still working on. But that is an Aspen issue that we've found. But what you're seeing here is big numbers on posts, that these posts are coming in, people are using the platform and sending information out, and it's been helpful. That's the feedback we're getting. Some of the feature usages, we're using currently 11 out of 14. That's kind of where we're going to sit for a while. Some of the other 3 are things like payments, which we're not going to enter into, and secure document delivery, which we're also not going to enter into. We have other ways that we want to continue to do that. But we've had 30 calendar events created here, 20,442 direct messages, which to me is huge. That's a great number to see the back and forth. I'm excited to see what this looks like next year, to see where we're at, and then put the 2 slides next to each other and say, here's where we were as infants with the program, and here's where we are having been through it for a year. Quickly moving on to artificial intelligence. Just in looking at AI generally, it's been the big push through EdTech for the last 18 months to 2 years. It's really hit the surface now with the products that are out there that are available for consumers to use that are now free. That ChatGPT has become sort of a brand name in the way that Band-Aid or Kleenex is, right? That I talk to my parents and all AI is ChatGPT to them. But when we have conversations like, hey, here's this thing that was done with AI, we adjusted this photo, a picture of my son from our hockey tournament this past weekend. The photographer comes in, takes these great shots, and he's got chocolate like all around his mouth. And we say, we'd like to buy this, but we can't because, and the person running the photo booth without skipping a beat is like, Photoshop's got this AI feature in it that will just clean that right up and it won't even look like it was there. And sure enough, we bought the pictures. So without the chocolate. But in looking at AI, things like automating tasks, if it's drafting lesson plans or creating worksheets or developing quizzes where you're giving the data to it and saying, build me out some essay questions from this information. There's one tool called Notebook LM that Google has created where you can dump a bunch of PDFs into it and then create things from those PDFs. You can create your own course, you can create your own unit plans, lesson plans, right, based on just those PDFs. The providing feedback for students, I'm a little leery on that in the sense that I'm not sure I'm ready to put student work into this yet, given whatever the platform could be, just based on student data privacy agreements that we have signed. So the providing feedback, we can get information from students, we can collect the information from students, the staff can look at it, and then come up with ideas for student feedback without putting the student information into the AI platform. But the biggest thing for us is supporting educators and trying to support that professional development. How do we craft personalized resources for 450 staff members who have very different needs in their classrooms? So we're able to do that a bit with Magic School. Magic School has a partner program called Magic Student. Within Magic Student, we can create guardrails for our students to operate within Magic Student. You create what's called a classroom, and you can give them the tools you want them to use as part of the project. In a previous tech tip email that I sent out to staff, looking at identifying what ways we want students to use AI and at what grade levels it's really acceptable to start using AI. And these are all conversations that we're having. Within those conversations are things like ethics, the ethics of AI. At what point is it okay to use AI? At what point is it not okay to use AI? The students themselves personalizing their learning. There's a great tool called Goblin Tools. It's goblin.tools. You put your problem into it, whatever your problem is, and it will break it down step by step for you. And with those steps, if those steps aren't succinct enough, it will break down the steps within the steps. So if you were baking brownies and you had to sift flour, how do I measure flour? That becomes part of what you would be asking with Goblin Tools. And so how you would measure the flour? Well, you got to pack it in nice and tight, et cetera, et cetera. Now I need to sift the flour. Well, how do I sift flour? Well, here's how you sift it. And it continues to give you, it branches down until you get to where you need to get to the next step. It breaks down those larger tasks into much smaller, more manageable chunks. It's excellent for our math and science students. It's excellent for writers. It's been a huge piece for accessibility. It gives students who are neurodivergent the ability to learn along with their peers and chunk things in smaller pieces. We're able to do lots of things with visual and hearing impairments for educational content, whether that's closed captioning. We've got a lot of tools now that are able to record students and change things into different languages for them. As far as research goes, that's probably the big one that you're seeing mainly for your own children who are using ChatGPT or an AI tool as the new Google. Right? What was the main cause of the Civil War? We're going to put that into ChatGPT. It's going to give me the information, and I might, just copy that and put it in my paper. We have detection services that we're using to try and avoid that kind of thing. We're asking our teachers to say, give meaningful assignments that are not just spit back the information to us. Make the assignments meaningful. When you go through using AI, what parts of the assignment can you use AI for? And that has been very helpful for our students. And the biggest one for AI right now is brainstorming. How do we get started? We talked about this at the break when nobody else was here, about the sentence starters, right? Before you would talk to a family member about, was it the Pilgrims, I think we said?
What should I focus on as I embark upon my 5th grade Pilgrim narrative?
Yeah. So you mentioned it to a family member give you some ideas, might point you towards the family set of dictionaries that are down in the basement from the 1970s, right? And then that's where you start from. That's where we started from, a lot of us anyway. And then now we've got, hey ChatGPT, hey Siri, hey whoever, what sorts of things should I think about when I construct an essay about women's rights in the Puritan movement? So we're able to get to those further steps with this. Where we are here, with AI, we started with stop 1 here was earlier last year, professional development with EdTech teacher, playing with tools like ChatGPT and Magic School. Moving on to prompt engineering and terminology, fundamentals. What does AI look like? What is a large language model? Understanding what the terminology is. And then moving on to stop 3, department meetings, faculty meetings, small group study, and PD sessions. How can we use it to leverage towards our teaching and learning? We're here now at stop 4, is what's the classroom impact like? What is the building impact like? What is the district impact like? And how can we start discussions about policy? And this is where most districts in the Commonwealth are at right now. In talking with Java-like people, through my tech groups, in talking to other superintendents, through MASS, that most people are right here. And we're all sort of in the same waiting period too, that DESE is working on something, that the Department of Education in DC, Office of EdTech, they're working on something. So we're sort of in a holding pattern, but at the same time, we want to do right by our students and make sure that things are in the right places for them. As far as accomplishments, the first thing we did this year was a transition to a responsible user policy, changing the language of our user policy to be less, don't, and more the best practices are. Our Tech Tip Tuesday newsletters, which I write every Tuesday morning, sometimes Monday nights with schedule send, and they're anything from like a brief idea in education using technology to a list of tools, some sort of thing in between. It's a lot of AI stuff. We moved our help desk system over to an email ticketing system. Instead of logging into a portal and having people log their ticket on a giant form, now people just email the word helpdesk@dover-sherborn.org, and that automatically creates a ticket in our system. It simplified the process for staff. What we found was people would abandon the portal and just email the tech staff directly, right? Least common, lowest common denominator. We're going to go right to the source. I'm going to email the tech that I know is here or that I like to work with, and then their email inbox fills up, and they don't have the ability to triage tickets. And people say, how come it took me 2 or 3 days to get this done? Now we can triage the tickets within our system with a tool that was already built into the system that we had. We've been looking at student data privacy agreements through tech. As a member of tech, we have access to their student data privacy agreements. There are over 2,000 agreements out there for basically every program you could think of. If it's not on the list, we can apply for them to create an Exhibit E, which is to allow to see if that program would be student safe. We have identified every tool that we are using in the district and identified them on a list and making sure that they all have data privacy agreements in place. We've had faculty meetings, PLCs, drop-in coaching sessions. We've revamped the website layout. Luke and Curtis Mahoney has taken that on and done an unbelievable job with that. Nick Jones, our senior network manager, went and got new staff devices for our Chickering educators, so they're all using brand new laptops this year. We rolled out Parent Square and trained, and we did Magic School as well as that AI support. Upcoming projects, technology long-range planning, trying to figure out where we want to go as a district with technology. And that is included in that is student access to technology, whether all students are using an appropriate device that they should be using for the work that they need to do, whether that's at the high school level where we're in a bring your own device environment or at our other schools. Collaborating with families on the use of social media, which Superintendent McCoy talked about before. Professional development opportunities in and out of district, lots of good conferences to go to, lots of Java-like groups to go through. As a team, we attended the MassQ conference in the fall, and we gained a lot of information from that. As a team, we're going to be attending the Meta conference, not Meta, Facebook Meta, but the Massachusetts Educational Technology Administrators Association group has a conference they're going to be doing in March. New staff devices coming for the high school, the middle school, and Pine Hill this summer. The high school and middle school ones from budget from this year, Pine Hill from budget for next year. We have our first student intern that started today. We have him 4 blocks per day, sometimes 2 blocks per day, but he's working on basic troubleshooting, answering tickets. He's going to become an ACER certified repair tech as part of a free program that ACER runs. He's going to be doing that for what would be term 3, so from now until, say, April 1st. April 1st, he leaves us to go off and do senior project at Mass Bay Community College to work in their cyber range for a cybersecurity internship that he's going to be doing there at the college, where he works directly with the director and the support staff there. And then the use of E-rate funding, should it still exist, to replace access points. Those are that little white box on the ceiling there is an access point. That's where the internet comes from. And is dispersed throughout the building. We have a good faith effort to replace them at the high school, at Pine Hill, and in the science wing upstairs here in the middle school. And finally, George Koros, who I've always admired. Technology will never replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of great teachers is transformational. So happy to take any questions. Yes.
Thank you so much. I can't believe you've only been here since August, September. You have taken an entire district and you have helped us culture shift, which to Parent Square specifically, but all these other amazing things that you've already accomplished. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone who could do that, and you've done it.
It's a team. This team is.
And you have said several times all of the wonderful people that support you. But in this moment, I'm just going to recognize you because the team is wonderful, but the leader is priceless, and we're so happy to have you. Thank you so much for doing this great work.
Thank you.
How has the teacher feedback been?
Teachers are great. As a former teacher, I would say that there are certain types of teachers that are early adopters. They want to jump into something. They're like, get in my classroom, show me this thing that you're doing. There are other teachers that will wait and see what that teacher did, and then jump in, and I'm there to assist them as well. And then there are other teachers who will say I'm not using Google Classroom. My college roommate is one of them who said, I'm not using Google Classroom because there's no Google Classroom in the world. And I said, your phone is in your pocket every day. Every day. You have a calendar and email and all of that stuff to keep you organized. This is the way they stay organized. All right. So we have conversations with each level of teacher like that. And thankfully, we've been given a space where we can take chances and put things out there, and we can say, we're going to get a subscription to this tool, and we're going to explore it, and we're going to have the professional development time to really dive into it and see how it can impact teaching and learning. Whereas it's not like that everywhere else, where the director of technology is also doing the network, is also doing the elevators and the door locks, and I'm serious when I say this, like everything that has an on-off switch falls back into the technology department. That it's not like that here. That there's ample opportunity for everyone here to show their strengths, and for Nick Jones to be able to sit down and diagnose a problem on his own and not have to call a vendor in, to be able to do that here is really special. The teachers are the same way. For us to be able to do a deep dive with Carly and Kelly this summer, they were the first ones to contact me. I had been here 2 weeks and they contacted me and said, we're doing this interdisciplinary course. We want you to come talk to us about what we can do for project-based learning. And we sat for like an hour and a half. It was great. And I got to spend all sorts of money. For them. It's
Don's
coming.
like, what?
I was going to say, you didn't highlight the one thing that's been exciting to me is really like digging and looking at the analytics of all the programming software that we pay for. As you see, your budgets have grown, right, in that arena. But I think that in bringing on Google Classroom, the higher level where you actually pay for it, and the new bells and whistles that come with that are allowing us to eliminate some things that we had paid for. But just looking, we have found software that I think we thought was integral to what we do. No one's using that. So that is like from a budgetary standpoint, she didn't highlight that. But I think it's exciting that we actually know how to capture the data and look at it. And then whereas a few people, so Brandon has found a few things that software packages that we buy that maybe 3 people use. So we're treating like how can you move to something else? So just know that is a fiscal piece that we've been looking at to sort of streamline and spend our money as smartly as we can.
And if I could just highlight, you might have met Lucan before. He's been here sometimes to help us set up technology. As red hair, he's the youngest member of our tech department. Maybe, I don't know, Brandon, if he's younger,
he's
younger than you, but he's absolutely amazing.
Lucan's like 15 years old.
But he's for the last few years just been very quiet, diligent, reserved guy. But ever since Brandon showed up, he's still quiet, but he has taken off. And can you talk a little bit about the app project he did?
We were in a teacher came into a world language teacher came into our office and said there's a Chrome extension that you could click to copy the accent marks for Spanish, and most Chrome extensions are free extensions. It's someone's cooked up a little program and they submit it to Google and Google just approves it and it goes. The program that they were using started to fail. And it was no longer being supported. The developer had moved on to another project and wasn't going to come back to it. Lucan took it upon themselves to create another version of it in multiple languages, submit it to Google, get it approved, and then push it out to all the staff and student devices within 5 days. Programmed the entire thing. And solved a problem that not only this district is facing, but other districts are facing, and then said that it was the intellectual property of the district. Because that's the kind of person they are. That not like I made this thing at work that I could try and make some money off of. No, it says in the notes, in the programming notes, this is the intellectual property of the Dover-Sherborn Public Schools. So that's...
Are we going to get money for it?
So we're actually now on some ads in Student Data Privacy Consortium tech. But yeah, that's the kind of person that Lucan is, and the kind of person that Kurt is, to be able to, roll up his sleeves and, figure out why the phones aren't working in this one particular area of the building and be in the ceiling and come out without having to call a vendor out at, say, $1,500 a day. We save with these people. These people are gold here.
They save me on the weekends sometimes, so I have to applaud Nick Jones too, because he's available 24/7.
Yep.
And your amazing intern sounds more accomplished than I am. So there we are. That's incredible.
Differently accomplished.
This individual is doing so much.
Yeah.
Just now in high school.
Yeah, Romy, the art intern Romy Lutazzi is a senior. He started today. He's going to be doing some really cool stuff for us. He started slow with inventory and some reading and fixing a couple broken Chromebooks and fixing setting up tickets and making sure the tickets were all taken care of that were open, but did a great job.
You're just trying to one up the interdisciplinary program, which is 2 blocks. You're taking this kid for 4.
Well, I guess I was told he had a certain amount of time he had to fulfill to hit the requirements on this, so
Well done.
happy to have him.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
The communication update is, I folded that into mine, so student services.
Okay, student services update.
All right, so Kate McCarthy is Director of Student Services. Many of you have met her before, and she works hand in hand with Ellen Browley, our Director of Guidance K-12, and so they are going to provide you with some updates relative to student support.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So it has been some time, and I know there's some new faces, so thank you for having me and Ellen tonight. Student Services is quite a department, and it covers guidance and special education and nursing. We're going to focus on 2 major aspects of the department. Challenge Success, we have been partnering with and started the initiative 10 years ago. So, when I joined the district in 2019-2020 school year, I was just so excited about having Challenge Success involvement, and so happy that I had Ellen next to me helping along the way, having been part of it from its launch. And so tonight we'll talk about, there's so much data and so much information. So Ellen did a ton of work, and we tried to put it together to give you a good overview of the main tenets of Challenge Success, the data we've collected, the feedback we've received, and the initiatives that have come from the program. And then kind of to capture that at the end, I'll be walking through the programming and the structures that we've put into place as a result of the feedback and the information and the supports that students need. So, here we go. Challenge Success overview.
All right, great. I have a lot of notes. I have a lot I'm going to touch on, so forgive me if I look down a bit, but I don't want to miss anything. So we launched Challenge Success in the spring of 2014. I had just become the guidance director that year. It was the 2013-14 school year. Before that, I was a middle school counselor here for 11 years. And I had seen kind of like the increase in kind of student mental health needs around stress and anxiety. So when I became director, I also became co-chair of a wonderful group called Guidance Advisory Council, made up of parent volunteers in grades 6 through 12. Christine's on our council. And, they're like, what do kids need? What can we do? Like, they were so excited to help. And they're like, what do you see as, what are the main issues? And we kind of like at the first meeting, the counselors always come and introduce themselves. And we were all talking about kind of like the uptick around stress and anxiety. And one of the parents happened to, it was a time of furlough, I believe, and she ended up just kind of Googling, like programming for schools around stress and anxiety, and Challenge Success came up out of Stanford University in California. And she kind of was like, I found this great program, but it's in California. And so we just started kind of learning more about it, having meetings with them. And we ended up kind of jumping in and doing our first survey in June of 2014. And then at the same time, got the survey results back, and in the fall of 2014, we were able to send a team of educators, a parent member, and 2 students to California, to Stanford, to participate in the fall conference with like all of the data we had to kind of learn about challenge success, as well as kind of problem solve some of the stressors we were seeing, you know, for our students. So that's kind of like a nutshell of how it came about. So our students at the high school were surveyed in 2014 and 2017, as well as 2024. The middle school had the first formal challenge success survey in 2024. So this past year, we had 507 high school students and 423 middle school students surveyed. And Challenge Success has been doing surveys since 2009. They've surveyed over 375,000 students, so they've definitely been doing this for a long time. The goals we kind of centered around with Challenge Success as we started the program launching was really looking at how do we reduce like unhealthy pressures and stress that we can control, as well as kind of promoting a broader definition of success, because it's such an individual thing for students, and just continuing to build mental and emotional resilience amongst our students. Challenge Success has priority areas around student well-being, engagement, and belonging. Back in 2014, they kind of broke those down a little bit more, as what you'll see, on the slide around exploring project-based learning, student voice, resilience, empathy, connections, screen time, homework policy, supporting balance. So those are all things we have explored and continue to explore with Challenge Success. And our overarching focus, as well as theirs, is still student well-being, engagement, and belonging. You look at some of our data. So some of the things we looked at first was sleep, because that's something that Challenge Success is a big proponent of, students getting enough sleep, and the school day kind of fostering that. So the first slide is around hours of sleep on a weeknight by grade. So for the most part, we have increased our sleep in grades 9 through 12. There's a little blip, as you'll see, in grade 9 in 2017, where it went down a little bit, but then it bounced back up in 2024. And even a little bit higher than in 2014. So, our student sleep has continued to increase. And also noticing that after, the pandemic and our later school start time, we definitely have higher numbers as well. Our middle school average, we have it by grade there, but just the overall average is 8.2 hours of sleep. So our middle school students are sleeping more than our high school students, which probably isn't surprising. And Challenge Success kind of highlighted us as we were kind of having our debrief meeting, because our average number hours of sleep are at 7.2 for grades 9 through 12. They also said that our modes, or our most frequent number, was 7.5 to 8 hours a night on a weeknight, and they said that's not common amongst other schools. So that was pretty good. And they also, as I'll go through some of this data, they gave us a peer school for reference to kind of see how we compare to a school that's very similar to DS. They didn't tell us who it was. So, our sleep hours were 7.2 at the high school. The peer school was 7.1. So pretty close.
Is there a recommended number?
Usually around 8 to 9. Yeah. And then just looking at, this is 8 hours or more per sleep on a weeknight, which is, kind of the great goal, 8 to 9 hours. Our middle school students are definitely doing a lot better at that, like 65% of them getting 8 hours or more per night. And up here, like middle school is at 67%, so we're very similar to them. And then our high school students, the sleep has definitely increased over the past 10 years. We definitely could use a little more sleep, it looks like, but it's getting there slowly. We definitely, the later school start time contributes to that. And also, I think at the high school level, any student grade 9 through 12 can sleep in if they have a directed research or a study hall first period of the day. So that gives them a little bit longer too on certain days. It wouldn't be every day, but it is a nice kind of way to kind of catch up on a little bit of sleep as well. All right, engagement. So Challenge Success looked at 3 different categories of engagement. We're going to talk about all 3. They have behavioral, cognitive, and affective engagement, and they use a 1.5 Likert scale. So going from never, rarely, sometimes, often, always. And the first bucket of engagement looked at is behavioral engagement, which is doing school, which kind of sounds good, right? It sounds like, hey, we're doing school, we're doing what we're supposed to do, and that's really what it is. They are doing what they're supposed to do. They're following along with classroom expectations. They're doing the work. The issue is they are having really low numbers around valuing what they're learning and enjoying what they're learning. So these are high numbers, and if the value and the enjoyment was in part of it too, it'd be great. So just kind of looking at it, so like as you look at the numbers a little bit, this is on like the 5-point scale, and I can give you a little synopsis on some of the questions of how often do you try as hard as you can, how much effort do you put into your schoolwork, how often do you pay attention in class, how often do you complete your assignments. So there was a little bit of an increase of doing school, it looks like in 2017, and then went back down a little bit in 2024, except for in grade 9 where it decreased from 2017, but it was an increase from 2014. And I wonder if the grade 9 thing, we talked about this a little bit in my department, is that they don't have as much choice around maybe electives as they get up in the later grades. Ideally, we want them to do school, like to follow along with the expectations and doing their work and value and enjoy it. So that brings us kind of to the next slide, which is the cognitive engagement. So this is where the value and the meaning comes in. So those type of questions that they looked at and rated on the 1 through 5 scales, how often do you find value in what you do in your classes? How often do you find schoolwork meaningful? How often do you think your schoolwork helps you deepen your understanding and improve skills? And how often does your schoolwork prepare you for your future? So again, we would want these numbers to be closer to the doing school numbers where there's more of the value coming through. And the numbers did increase in 2017. So I'm wondering, we were kind of heading there, we were getting a little bit better with this, and then what effect did kind of the pandemic have on that, and are we coming back out of it now, and are we going to see in our next round of surveys an increase in the meaningful learning and the value, the enjoyment of learning, which is our next slide, which is the effective engagement, which is really about like often or always doing their work and always and often valuing it and enjoying it. So this is the ideal. This is where we want to be. So we would want these numbers to be more like our doing school numbers. We'd want them to be higher in the 4 and ideally 5 out of 5 if we could ever get there. So those kind of questions are, how often do you enjoy your schoolwork? How often do you find schoolwork interesting? How often do you have fun in your classes? We are kind of similar to peer schools in this one. So our grades 9 through 12, we're on a 2.99 out of 5 Likert scale for effective engagement. Our peer school is a 2.76 out of 5 kind of thing. So yeah, this is what we're striving toward. This is what we're working on this year at both the middle school and the high school. We had PD time dedicated to look through these surveys and look through the data, and teachers coming up with some different action steps around homework, well-being, stress, engagement, and just highlight some of those for you. So some of the action steps teachers thought about were continuing to be reflective on the homework assigned, reviewing and reflecting the homework minutes assigned, providing opportunities for homework-free nights and in their classes, teachers helping encourage students to get involved at school, teachers making more time for connecting during class, teachers increasing an understanding of student schedules and their kind of demands on themselves and being more understanding that. And a lot of thought around students kind of evaluating their schedules, their course load, their extracurricular activities as well.
Were there opportunities in the survey for like written feedback? I'm just curious if there was any student voice in this.
Not in this type of survey, no. So then kind of going to the social emotional piece when looking at stress, because this was kind of where we started. If you look at grades 9 through 12, the question was around in the last 30 days, student reporting one related health symptom impacting them physically or emotionally. So in 2014, we were at 80% of students having a health symptom impacting them, which has decreased from 74% to 71%. A peer school in 2024 is at 81%, so we're a little bit lower than that, which is good. Also missing school due to a health or emotional problem. Our scores have decreased a little bit. Our numbers have decreased a little bit that way as well. Academic worry. So this was another kind of 5-point scale where they were asked to rate their level of worry around pressure to do well in school, not doing well in school, getting into college or a program or internship, not doing well in assessments or assignments, or parents being upset with grades. So we have a moderate degree of academic worry, definitely, and it is decreasing a little bit, even though there was a slight increase from 2017 to 2024. It's a little less than 2014. So we're trending in the right direction. Students do report their most common source of stress, both at our school and at a peer school, is grades, tests, quizzes, finals, assessments, which I don't think is surprising either.
Quick question on the time horizon for that question being asked. So sort of missed school due to health or emotional problem.
Yeah.
Was that over the last year?
No, 30 days. It was like a 30-day window. All right, connectedness. This is something we definitely have been working really hard on, and I feel like it kind of came to the forefront with the pandemic and kids being so isolated. One of the measures we look at is students being connected to an adult at school, and we have increased over the past 3 years with that. And so we're at 76.6% of connection with an adult. Our peer school is at 73%, just to kind of give you a little idea of that. Also, they measured connection to peer at school. So if you don't have an adult, you have a peer you can connect to. And we had 89.8% of students feel that they had a peer they could connect to as well. Obviously, we want all students to connect to an adult. And that's something that kind of goes with the next thing around belonging at school. The first time it was introduced in the survey was in 2024. So we were at 3.55 out of 5 for feeling belonging at school, which is around like feeling accepted, feeling part of the school, proud to belong to the school, feeling they could be themselves at school, other students at the school like them, or sometimes feeling they don't belong, or sometimes feeling they wish they were at another school. So that's something where we have an internal survey through Panorama Learning, which is an SEL survey, and we are able to have students report on their sense of belonging in that survey, and it's not an anonymous survey. So then we can actually kind of reach out and get and intervene with those students who don't have that sense of belonging. So at least it helps us figure out maybe who some of the 24% is.
And do we have, sorry to interrupt, do we have demographic data that we could slice this by? I think it
Yes,
would be, that would be
definitely.
interesting.
Yep, I could definitely share that. We definitely have that as well. I can send that along. Okay. All right.
So we fit a lot into this slide. So we tried to touch upon all the amazing things that have come from the Challenge Success program in the 10 years. One of the things that we'll talk about through the programming too is increasing social emotional staffing and programming. A big piece from the data that we've seen and just from the impact of students through the pandemic has been the need for additional supports and obviously connection and layers of intervention. So that has definitely been something driven by a lot of the data that we have had. Another piece around the mindfulness trainings for staff and students. This really, we weave this in as often as we can through faculty meetings, department meetings, PD time. It's really important to model for students through staff implementing things as well as implementing things within the school day. Schedule changes, there have been shifts. Obviously, one that we've talked a lot about has been the start time shift, and we've talked a lot about the sleep data, and then also some of the things that we've embedded within the school day around the flex time and the win blocks, and really looking at the school day and how important things like breaks and how important things like connecting with students during that time and providing supports and interventions and how important that is. And then when we were looking at the different speakers and presentations, Ellen's probably been at every single one, and this is probably maybe half of them. Like I think that's a big piece for the program and making sure the resources and the supports are available and accessed by a lot of people. I think that's always what we want to make sure is that the information that we have and the speakers that we have are such great sources of for families and for support, but sometimes it's hard to get to people available for the times that we have the speakers. So that's always kind of what we've been, but it's really been an amazing amount of speakers coming in for students, for families, for staff. This is just kind of some of the highlights.
And we have a small but mighty parent advisory group. Christina's also a member of that. And they work, tirelessly to try and bring parent education to the parents in Dover and Sherborn. This year we had John O'Sullivan about balance in youth sports at the elementary level. And then we're also doing Screenagers, which is a video around kind of screen time and understanding social media, things like that. So that's also going to be presented at the elementary level this year. We've had it at the high school and middle school level before both speakers. So thank you for all of your hard work there. We appreciate it. And then the last slide is just around.
Before you move on,
yeah.
on the resources for the parent guardian community, are we able to record them and make them available? Is that something that we're?
It depends on the speaker.
It
Sometimes,
does.
yeah. So if we are able to, sometimes we definitely share that out. Sometimes it'll be someone who lets like people look at it for 2 weeks at a time. Like it really depends on the speaker.
Sometimes it's the PowerPoint, the presentation, or the materials that we can send out. So it's limited.
Understood.
It depends.
So for screenagers, just as a plug, we would love for you to come in person, but understand if you can't. And the recording will be available for the following 2 weeks.
That's helpful. Thank you.
And this might be a broader conversation, but do we feel that the start time shift has been successful? Like, are we post-pandemic enough to have a sense?
Yeah, I think that was part of the impetus for looking at this data. Not only are we at our 10-year mark, but the biggest goal of the start time shift was increasing sleep for our middle and high school students, and we've seen that happen.
Yeah.
And I think that it's difficult to look at the other goals of the start time change around tardiness, attendance, social emotional well-being, because the pandemic has thrown all of that up in the air. So we can really stick to the sleep thing. We can look at their alertness in class, which has been a positive shift. I was going through the slides in preparation for tonight, and I was looking at the 3 options we looked at when we were thinking about the start time, and I thought to myself, if my children, who are now in 9th grade and 11th grade, had to be at school at 7:35 in the morning, oh my goodness, like what a different world that would be for them. So I think that we've proven the point that it's been a positive change, and we'll stick with it.
Despite the challenges in the elementary school that we see every year about Sheeta and DITA? What is it on the other side? DITA, right?
I don't think we see those challenges anymore. I mean, there's very small wait lists. I don't think there's a wait list at all in DITA, and Sheeta, there might be a few, but we take over 100 kids in that program.
I guess I would push on that as a Sherborn parent. Like there are always every September, August, panicked text messages and WhatsApp messages around anxiety there. It still probably might be worth it based on the data.
And some of that too is until it's a interesting position to hire for. And so some of that is that we have to make sure we have the staff, and so
it's that rolling.
We have exactly, when we get the staff on board, we take in another 10, but we can't take everyone if we don't have the guaranteed staff. So a little bit of nature, and you're going to find that, I will tell you, we're like one of the last remaining like school districts that run their own program, because it is impossible from staffing, and we're so fortunate that a lot of our in-school staff stay, our school lunch, our EAs, and so we have built a family that or come back to us, but we still need those core people, and it is an unusual job. Your work hours are unusual. It's not a 40-hour-a-week job. So I think that I personally think, I've been working so closely, that we have phenomenal people, and the programming that we do at both schools, I think, is heads and tails above what you'd see. The programming that we bring in a caring environment that happens. So it might be a little, but it's in the safety of the students that we've got to get the staff in place. And I think we've gotten better, because we've raised our rates. We've got people coming back. I've seen huge improvements in who we're able to accept before school starts versus how many we're adding in that first September and October realm.
Just to build on what you're saying, Dawn, my youngest is in Sheeta, and my oldest was for several years, all the years, and my youngest will be in there for all the years as well. And the dedication of that staff is inspirational. It truly is. We are asking them to work very hard hours when you think about it, because we've had our children in the classrooms working hard on focusing for the hours of the school day, and then they are unleashed upon these really kind and understanding souls who are there for about 3 hours, again, to your point about different working hours and the benefits that might come along with that. And just as a quick example, today there was a large tree that fell down at Pine Hill. So that happened more towards the extended day afternoon hours. So they were dealing with that. And then, of course, there was a fire alarm because there was some sort of smoke or something going
Well,
on.
we lost power. When the power
Right.
came back on, which sometimes happens, some of your
Yes.
electrical equipment gets
Yes.
a little haywire.
And so this staff took all of these kids very quickly out of what could have been a dangerous situation, luckily wasn't. And everyone was evacuated and put in the outdoor learning classroom where they were all having the time of their life. And for anyone, they had no coats, they had no boots because the staff wanted to get them out quickly. They didn't understand the situation, like what was unfolding. They just had the best interest of the kids, all in that shed. Everybody having the time of their lives. Myself, I ran. I'm like, I've got to get the baby. I've got to get the baby. But she's not wearing a jacket. She's in a shed. She was having the time of her life. And Mr. Dave, who is a Sheeta icon out there.
Who's also your lead. He's the manager of the kitchen.
Yes, yes. Just cracking jokes with the cops on the scene, the firefighters on the scene, bringing people like myself down to a place where I can just take my child and not cry in the car. They are so wonderful. It's great to have.
And my kids are both in it as well.
Oh, yeah,
totally
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Fabulous experience, but I just want to make sure we are aware that there are families who are looking at August 31st and don't have childcare, and that's hard. Might still be the right choice, but I mean,
Well, from a school start perspective, though, I mean, we ran the hour after school to bridge that gap, and we did not have participation. So we covered that. And if that's the gap, if that school start change is just that hour, then we can revisit that. But we ran that at both elementaries for a year.
It hasn't been.
And we had offered it the next time and didn't have any subscribers. So, but something that if we get that feedback, we called it the ABC after the Bell Club.
Yeah.
We can certainly look at reinstating that, but it wasn't anything that we were getting any volume of participation that we could run it.
I think besides the possible challenge of after school care in early start time in elementary school, I don't think we still have any data, or if we have looked at the effects of early start time in elementary school. We have some data about middle school and high school, and of course, I have a child in middle school, and I see the benefits of sleeping an extra hour, but we really don't know the effects on elementary schools, and I think it's worth looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, during the initial process, there wasn't a lot of data there either, and there still isn't.
Yeah.
So I think over time there will be more, and we'll definitely, keep apprised of it. In looking at the data, and Kate did a big deep dive into looking at academic data, tardies, social emotional health. Again, we don't know what the pandemic caused. Well, we do because there's research on that, right, about how that shifted everything. But there weren't any big things that stood out to us at the elementary level, but we will certainly keep an eye on it.
I had one other thing. In terms of the sleep data, I would be interested to see the responses from our METCO students. I've been really concerned about sleep for those students. As I've gotten to know them, we have a METCO student in our house now. And part of that is so that he can sleep later. I'll take him during the week, so he can sleep past 5. And they're spending incredible amounts of time on the bus. And then driving to get the bus, it's really a schedule that most adults would struggle with. He's not getting home until 6:30. He's starting his homework then. He's exhausted. So in terms of what can we do and thinking forward, I know budgetary things and running a second bus, but these are kids who should be getting the benefit. He's middle school. But he's not getting the benefit of that because there's one bus. So if that's something we could look at, pulling out that data, I think it would be really valuable to our students.
Yeah, thank you. The Student Advisory Council is very interested in that as well. So they're advocating for their peers.
And also, I was surprised by the number. If you can go back and look at the data of the hours reported for sleep, I was surprised with the increase. It was not that significant.
Well, it's half an hour-ish.
Half an hour.
Yeah, which is a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And the smartphone came out, and
Yeah.
so where does social media play into this? Who has cell phones in their rooms?
Yeah.
Is this self-reported though? How did they get this?
Better.
Yeah,
self-reported.
Right.
I think that's the challenge.
TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Take that over.
Yeah.
Grain of salt too.
Do they know how to count hours?
Yeah, right.
And I think Helen and Kate obviously know better than this, but I do feel that if I might just be speaking plainly, puberty also disrupts sleep. And those are prime grades where people are going through major hormonal changes. So that might be something to take into consideration as well.
And phones.
And bones,
Yeah.
right. Puberty and bones.
And I think it's hard to calculate sleep. So if it's kids calculating their own sleep, like when did they actually go to bed?
Right.
It could go both ways.
Kids are super shady.
Yeah.
So is the next survey going to be 3 years? Or how does it work?
Yeah, they recommend like 2 or 3 years, so we'll have to kind of see where we're at in next year, I guess, and figure that out. This just last slide. One of the main tenets of Challenge Success is around student voice as well as a priority for us as well. So we try and incorporate student voice as much as possible. So I included this because they were asked which of the following changes would really improve your school experience. And they're mostly in order, except for the coordinate due dates for assessments and projects was a little less at the middle school. And I think the team model lends itself to coordinating that much better than at the high school where teachers have different grades and different students. But just so you can kind of see some of the things that they put down that would make DS improve things at DS. And just in terms of student voice, we have obviously we have surveys that we have student voice, and we also do a lot of feedbacks like within the guidance office, and I know teachers do it as well around what kids want to learn about, how lessons run, what they want to add or change each year in our seminar models and things like that. We include students on interview committees and now with the Superintendent's Advisory Council, so we try and incorporate as much student voice as we can so that we continue to get more information than just numbers and kind of hear from them directly. Thank you.
Can you remind us again are there general guidelines for the teachers for weekend homework and break homework? And
So usually breaks there's no homework except for in AP classes at the high school, but not Thanksgiving break there's no homework at all any class. But during other breaks there could be some AP homework around reading and things like that for classes. But on the weekends there we don't have every weekend homework free, but there are specific like homework free weekends, Thanksgiving, and then the week before MLK Day at the middle school, and then the weekend after MLK Day at the high school, because they've taken exams all week, they haven't had homework. But I think the kids would like maybe a couple more of those sprinkled in.
It'll be interesting in 2 or 3 years when we do the survey again to look at the engagement data.
Yeah.
The whole premise of the 9 best practices is to make learning student-centered, meaningful, relevant. So hopefully those numbers will go up. And we'll see. The other piece of the question about the open-ended question, Challenge Success has a program that we're going to be implementing with the help of our Student Advisory Council members, the I Wish program, which is where they write a message. I wish my teachers knew blank. I wish my parents knew blank. And then we look for themes, and then we develop programming and solutions to kind of develop the big ideas.
Great. So now just a shift to, if you think about other Challenge Success questions, we're happy to field those, but just thinking about the programming, some of this will be repeat, but some things that have been kind of shifted or modified in the last few years. So our integrated preschool programming, this is something that we have had for a very long time. We have a classroom at Pine Hill and now 2 classrooms this year at Chickering. That was really just due to population and shifts there. But we have the recommendation is that the classrooms are up to 15 students. The ratio for the program is a mixture of students who have IEPs and need special education supports and students that they call kind of typically developing peers. So it's a makeup of a combination of the 2 populations in the classroom. The classroom is supported by a special educator and related service providers as needed and educational assistants as well. So this has been, the high needs programming has if anyone would remember, Goals program at Pine Hill. Last year is now our Connections program, located at Chickering. Again, a shift due to population and needs. And so we have this year students accessing that program at both Chickering and middle school. The programs are small and have kind of a range of students, maybe between 4 students or 8 students per building, supported by a team of special educator, related service providers, behavioral supports, and next year we will be branching the strand and having it also available at the high school level. So one of the pieces we did a program review which created our kind of revamping and resetting of the Connections program this year. Some of the recommendations that came from that review was thinking about the whole strand and thinking about students throughout their time in Dover-Sherborn, as well as continued support through kind of an outside consultant coming in, working with staff, making sure that the programming that we put into place has clear exit and entry criteria, curriculum, and is meeting the needs of the students. Just something that I included in thinking about these programs as we build programs. I'll kind of at the end talk about our out-of-district population and our out-of-district trends that we're seeing. Students that generally would be out of district if we didn't have these programs, those placements outside of Dover-Sherborn could cost about $75,000, and then that's an average. Each placement can vary, and then on top of that, transportation is usually about $25,000. That information is more like individual for each student. Those are just ballparks, but just kind of important to note that these programs are so important. We want to support our students within district, in their home district, in the least restrictive environment. And our language-based programming. So I found out today through kind of in the past few weeks preparing for this, that this is our 10th year with our language-based programming at middle and high school. So we have, so this programming supports students with reading disabilities that require support in kind of academics throughout the day. It's not necessarily just English. It's in every curriculum engagement, and they have supports through a special educator and educational assistants. Sorry, there's a edit there for counselor. Must have added that. They can work with a counselor. But so our language-based programming includes support outside of the class as well as support in the class, and supports students kind of across all different levels around their reading needs. So we have 2 levels of social emotional one thing I forgot to say about the language-based programming is outside placements for our language-based programming. One thing to note is that they're few and far between. There aren't very many language-based programs that are out of district, so that's one of the kind of other imperatives to have this, so that we can support students within the district. Those placements are about $65,000, and again, the same piece around $25,000 for transportation.
Can I just add to that, though? This was one of the programs that when I first was on school committee, we had a cohort of out-of-district placement. So when you can identify a cohort that you're sending out, that's what allowed us to bring it back in. And like Carroll School, we probably had a whole school bus going to Carroll School, Landmark. So that's where I can actually see that it's rare for us to have those placements anymore, because we've built the program in district, and we've also strengthened what we do at the elementary, so that you don't see as strong of a language base in the elementary, because it's just embedded in what we do. Great strides that I think we've taken in the language-based arena over the last 10 years.
And on that note, another piece is that at our elementary level, the number of staff members who have Wilson or Orton Gillingham training it's kind of doubled in the past few years to add those supports for students at the elementary level. Okay, so our social emotional programming. So one of the things for people who have been part of these conversations for a long time, we now have the Bridge program, which is available in all 4 buildings as our K-12 program. It used to be called the Center at Chickering, but it's the same. It's the Bright model where at the elementary, the focus of the program is more the Bridge space is a time for students to have a check-in, use a strategy if they need some support within the school day to really get them back to class and to try to use that as a support. What we see at more the middle and the high school level is they may be accessing the support in as a result of maybe being out of school for some time. We've used it for mental health supports outside. We've used it for post-concussion students. So any disruption to the students' education that they need support to get back on track. So that can look like a lot of different things. But just so you know, we were one of the first elementary schools to have at Chickering to have this model because you see it more at the middle and the high school range for more of your typical out of school for a chunk of time, need support transitioning back. It's been so helpful at the elementary level in helping students to identify kind of if they need to take a break or if they need to get a support, having a space and having some strategies that they learn, and then having that be a strand that we have now district-wide. So that's the Bridge program. So the GRIP program is in its 6th year. So it started in our middle school as a social emotional program. There are a lot of things that I just said about Bridge that are also true about the GRIP program. But one of the main pieces is there's a special educator attached. There's educational disruption, and there's a need for a student to have an IEP that has really outlined the supports that are based in the GRIT program, and that supports their emotional, behavioral, and academic, kind of all of the different areas. The Bridge program is technically supposed to be transitional and short term, and the GRIT program is not. So that's kind of one of the other than this being a special education program. I know I'm kind of sounding redundant with the pieces around the financial impact, but students that it's kind of in a similar ballpark where we see students that maybe need a higher level of support through social emotional programming for out of district, and that could be around $70,000, and same with the transportation, around $25,000. I think the one piece that we continue to see is that no matter the programming we create, there will still be students that need out of district. There will still be students that need a more contained program. All of our programs really have a lot of inclusion, have a lot of students that are in integrated, have co-teaching, have inclusion supports within the general ed classes, but that they're still going to, that's kind of another population that may still go out of district. But so our middle and high school program. So this is just a kind of overview of 1920 versus today. I will say this has been, there are lots of reasons that the numbers are what they are. I think a lot of pieces are the programs, and that is we have been able to both bring students back from out of district placements, keep students from needing to go out of district. We've also had students who kind of age out and are 22 plus, and that has also impacted the number. So I do, this is something that I think the staff is very proud of, something like this, because we do want to keep students in district as much as we can. There will still be opportunities for students that exist elsewhere that are not in district, but this is definitely something that through our reviews and through, I know people have heard, when I first came on, we had just done an audit of special education programming, which created the outline for some of the programs that we needed. But then when they did another review a few years ago, they were able to really look at that and as something that's not very common. I think that this is definitely something that the district is very proud of. So.
That's it for student service.
Question.
A lot, and thank you for
Yeah.
summarizing it. It's impressive.
For a small district, we have a lot of opportunities for students. It's exciting.
Thank you.
All right, thank you both. So now we can move on to a couple of discussion items that we have here. So in your packet, we have a review of the district bullying and prevention plan. This was the first read. Does anybody have any questions on it, or does anybody want to present any piece of that?
Kate, do you want to just speak to that a little bit?
So for the, I'll just walk through some of the changes from the policy. Everyone can see it in yellow, like what's changed. Okay. So the flow chart. So where we took the or harassment out wherever it's listed. It's not that that's not a focus area for us, but for bullying specifically, that's kind of harassment. By definition, harassment is based on a protected class, and bullying doesn't have that aspect to it. So that's why this is more focused just on bullying. That's the main reason why that was crossed out. And then the only other piece here was the portion in the intervention. What page is the list? Oh, here it is. On page 8, that was just more specific around specific people we were using and supporting. We have consultants and we have curriculum, but that was just outdated, who we were engaging with in those. So that was it for the policy. And then, I don't know if people wanted to ask questions about that, and then I could talk about the form? Or do you want me to go through all of it? Yes.
I have a quick question. So is there any specific different policy for handling harassment? Okay.
Yes, and it has its own flow chart.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I double checked that.
We care about harassment. It's just not.
It's not a thing.
And you just updated it. Well done.
Thank you.
I had a question on kind of timeline. So from the first day of it being reported to kind of closing out this flow chart, is there a recommended timeline of a week, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months?
They don't usually give prescribed dates, and we usually try to say like within like as quickly as possible. But we don't really have a prescribed amount of time. I will say that's part of the reason for some of the revisions of the reporting form, so that the follow-up and the timeline are noted and documented as to when those are happening. I think I would say, like if I would say something like in a week, there might be certain students that need to be spoken with that aren't here. Right. So I think that's why it's not, but I think it's quickly, but there's not necessarily a prescribed recommendation for time. Good question.
Any other questions on that? Because we don't need a vote on that right now, right?
No, it's just your first read.
Okay.
Can I just make one comment on the reporting form? In terms of the follow-up timeline, there's a lot of actions listed for the aggressor. Sort of like what is the outcome? I'm hoping to find out more about options for victims, and if victims are offered accommodations or if they've been offered it, and what kind of accommodations can we offer victims? Because I think that this process really puts the victim second all along, just from my recent experience as well as others. And I just want to make sure we're really addressing the issue of when the students come back to school, what their experience is actually like. Having been bullied, having been, in some way, what that experience is really like for those students, and acknowledging it and validating it, and making sure that we are providing the services, all of the services that we possibly can. And so I think that's something valuable to add to the form. Accommodations were offered and which ones were accepted.
So on page 8 though, like that chart where victim is the first column, perpetrator, like in those.
Sorry, my page numbers are.
Sorry, the top of the form is findings and next steps.
So it looks like it's meant for both the.
Yep. So the first column is the victim, the second column is the like. So I just wondered if that was what you were, or if there is that.
I'm hoping
cover?
to make it a little more explicit that we are supporting victims in this process, that we always are, and that it's not just what's going to happen to the perpetrator, but how are we supporting those students, our students who were victimized in some way. I think we need to prioritize that as a district, and I think I would like to see it in this form.
So that's what I'm just asking, are there suggestions?
Where the page, let's see, 9.
So on 8.
Sorry.
If you look back one.
The bottom of 9, the beginning of 10. Through the follow-up actions, there's the target and the aggressor, the student target follow-up actions. I don't know if the wording could be changed to be more about accommodations and what sort of accommodations we can offer so that they're aware.
Okay.
Being more explicit about what is offered to victims and their families. Or, whether it be a change in schedule for the aggressor, or if it is a group therapy, or if it is some sort of therapy that the school, with our mental health resources, that we could offer. I think that's worth taking a look at and being more explicit about, so that victims or targets feel supported in this process as well.
And I know that's definitely a focus. I think I'm just trying to figure out between kind of next steps being those consequences and intervention on page 8 of like counseling, as you said, and safety plan and plan. So maybe it's just around the categories and because I surely want to make sure it's clear that we support the victims. I think.
I mean, if they're actively being offered each of these things, each of these accommodations that which page, I'm sorry?
Page 8, see this chart?
Part of the appendix A, I think you're on page 8 of the previous part.
Yeah. I have it as page 30 if you're opening it electronically.
Yeah, 30 if you open it.
Package, yeah, 204 pages.
Yeah.
So it has 2 columns.
Yeah, I think she's saying it's basically identical for both people. But
So you could choose which party.
both parties.
Yeah, the counseling and therapeutic interventions, check in, check out, safety plan, school bus planning and notification. I would suggest looking at schedules, looking at times when a victim could be, doing a presentation or doing something that's public, and they have this person, there, just sort of more of a broader what we can offer in terms of the real life experience of these students. Maybe they don't even take the bus anymore, because of it. And so the planning, I'm just saying there's a lot of things that victims end up doing sort of to bend, to accommodate what's happened to them. And I would like to see the same attention being taken from the school.
Yeah. I think the only thing I would add is, like, for example, like this is a list that we would use for so many scenarios, like loss of privileges, put a note, loss of bus privilege. Like, so for your example, I think it's great to have an exhaustive list of every piece that could happen. That's where the other comes in. So maybe adding some more specifics for people to pull in on, because when you're pulling so much information, to have as many options as possible would be really good to have. So maybe adding some options.
Yeah, or defining the counseling and therapeutic intervention. Defining it more specifically so that families know what is available to their student.
And maybe that's not on the form itself, but rather on another.
Yeah, right, because this is an internal form, right? The families don't see this.
Right.
Page 1415 has kind of a double click a little bit more into the specifics. It has this bulleted list of almost what you're saying.
In the plan, not in the report.
On the policy, right?
Yeah.
Sorry,
The plan.
And so I don't know if they'll see that, or whoever in the course of the investigation will get access to that.
Sorry, what page now are
It's
14?
Hold on.
It's not the
14, 15 in the
appendix.
packet. Yeah.
If you're looking at the, it's got that yellow big paragraph after it.
It's 17 on the, in the packet of 204.
A lot of
And
numbers.
it covers
Yeah.
families.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where if you feel your child is a target or your child is being investigated, you could go to this plan to get more information.
Yeah, it outlines all of the
So
options.
maybe there's a reference to this?
Yep.
Could we make a reference, a citation to the,
And I wonder if too, right now it's one table for victim and perpetrator and positive and negative consequences and supports. I wonder if we have one for the victim, one for the perpetrator.
that feels right.
Great idea. Great.
Also,
Makes for a long, but that makes
Well,
sense
makes
to
for
me.
clear like what you're offering now.
Yeah.
Well, but I will, yes, but you
You're
could
offering
all,
both
you
to
could,
both.
you could,
Yeah.
like that's I think why it, but two separate charts that say a lot of similar things.
But there would be some things that would be
Right,
obviously
not
not
on the
applicable
victim
for
one, exactly. Yeah, that, if people think that is an internal shift would make sense, then sure.
Then you can focus on one and focus on the other.
Yeah.
just one little, I'm sorry, either victim or target, either aggressor or perpetrator, if that's correct.
Yeah. Use
And I'm not sure
interchangeably many
victim
times.
is the language that you want to use.
Yeah, it was target. It was target.
And perpetrator seems very criminal minded.
Good. The attorney picked that up.
What would we do without you, Martha?
Well, you'll see
Nope.
our work product coming up on the agenda.
Okay, so any further comments on the first read for the bullying policy? So then Martha already was leading into the next discussion item. We have update from our policy subcommittees.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank my policy subcommittee people that this has been, it's a labor of love because it's a lot of long things. So when you're looking at what we sent in your packet, there's these fun things and they have red and then blue and there's stripes, and I'm going to explain how this all works. And I had done a memo, but then some tree fell, and I'm such a rule follower. I had gone out, and then I couldn't get back into my neighborhood. And finally, I texted my neighbor. I'm like, "What do I do?" She goes, "Just go around the cones." So I did. I was then couldn't get into my house, and then the power was still off, and I couldn't get up into the cloud. I was like, "There's no internet." So anyway, so this will be sent to you all tomorrow. This is our little synopsis. So this is the memo on policies F, H, and L. So policy F is, ironically, facilities policy. So the long and the short of it is it deals with the facilities of Dover-Sherborn, all the school buildings. And the goal of the school committees is to provide adequate facilities for the number of students in the requisite schools. And said facilities must provide the best support for our educational programs. Also, mind you, this purpose must be mindful of the money that we have as a district and the priorities that we need to use our resources in the best available way. So the section also deals with the retiring of facilities when they are past their useful purpose and how to redress a new facility if one has to be procured and the procedures that must be followed. Another thing that this adds is the naming of facilities and guidelines that we have to follow, because there are certain things that the MASC has said is their policy. So where we come into this is we have a lot of things listed that are kind of like Dover-Sherborn policy, but it may not align with the MASC. We have to align with our state policy. So that's first and foremost. So then once we've done that too, what we've realized as a committee, a lot of things that are in our policy are really procedure, which is great to tell everybody but it's not really necessary. So our policy manual is huge, and really what this is a procedure that can be broken down at each building sometimes, because sometimes it's a broad thing and it only applies to, Chickering or Pine Hill or just to the region, and so it's kind of overly broad in that sense, or it's not dealing with our specific issues. So what we did was we struck some policies, and we redacted some and then changed it. If you ever see his or her, one thing that we did universally was make it there. It just seems cleaner and it seems to take out a lot of the jargon. So for policy F, like FA, the specific language was in favor of MASC, so we ended up using the MASC kind of version for that one. We removed FAE. There are so many policies because it was redundant. So you'll see that throughout. The one that FB gave the parameters for the school building committee, which we do have because I serve on it, and we're looking at
that's different. That's a subcommittee. I think
right,
this is
for each building.
I think no, but I think this is referring to when you build a building.
Right. But you have to get a committee together, and that was another thing in here that we struck out. There was something about there was a section in this policy that we ended up taking out because it didn't make any sense about how long we have to kind of do a punch list. Like that was just so broad that the school committee had to be involved, quote unquote, in a punch list. I mean, if anyone has extra time and wants to just go out and do I'm sure Dawn or whoever is on top of the committee would be like, great, thanks for your help. But I didn't know if we wanted to memorialize it and make our school committee members say, you have to go and make sure within 30 days the punch list is done. I mean, obviously we're going to do that as a budgetary thing to make sure that everything is abided by. So most of our policies either are removed or they're streamlined. So like for instance, subsection FB1 and FBAA, those were removed because they're redundant. They say the same thing, and we put them in just section FB. And so there are DS policies incorporated also for FBAC, FBAD, and FAE. Those are all with reference to how to run the facilities and things like that. We didn't need all that. So the procurement laws was in sections FCC. We incorporated that into FA and FB. And the naming facilities, that's the one that we have some things named, and you don't change things that are previously named, but it's going forward. The MASC said that you don't memorialize something in a staff member or student or community member's name. And instead, it is better to have it as like a scholarship or something else is how you memorialize it. So that's how it is kind of going forward. So that's it. For instance, when I talked about the procedures, section FG, if you look at that, that was a completely procedural issue, and there was just really no need to have that in there. So we took that, we struck that totally out. So sometimes when you see the red and you're like, where did the whole thing go? It actually did go away. So that was the longest of what we're going to do tonight, because that was the one with the inspection of the completed project, the FG, which we're like, that's completely procedural. So the next one was policy H, which is negotiations. And so that is for like our every 3 years, our negotiations with our teachers and everything like that. So this is the policy and regulations on the process of negotiating with the bargaining units, recognized by the school committees and authorized by state law, and mandates that the committees may hire a negotiator and the duties of said negotiator, which we have done previously in years past. This aligns totally with the MASC guidance, and it's a merger of Dover-Sherborn policies and the MASC policy. The only thing really to reflect in this is that we changed the titles to their instead of his and her, and there were grammatical corrections. A lot of this, if you'll look, there's a lot of read through this, and it's because there was so much that we just kind of struck it out and totally rewrote the whole thing, but it was rewritten as to what the MASC stated. So it's correct language. It abides by state law guidance, and it's how to set up acceptable agreements, which we have to abide by anyway. So this is just the way to go. And the last one is section L, which is the education agency relations. And that's a policy that encourages to liaison with other educational agencies to broaden the scope and effectiveness of learning. It was just pretty straightforward. One thing that sections LB and LBC were overlapping, so we cleaned it up and went with the MASC version. Section LDA talked about student teaching and internship guidelines, and the Dover-Sherborn and the MASC policies matched, so there really was nothing to change. And so then the very last section was removed because it was addressed in the section above for internships and student teaching. So we just tried to take out duplicates because it was a vast amount of policies. So this is your first read. You'll get your memo, and we'll attach this. You'll get it tomorrow. It just kind of shows you where to look. But this was not as cumbersome. We're still going. There's a lot of policy, and there's a lot of grammatical things, and there's a lot of procedures, which is wonderful. But we think we should put that kind of at our level at each school. So.
Yeah, and the ability to change procedures is much easier than the policy. The other thing that our group was really focused on is when we're saying it's overlap, that can also be particularly bad for us because there's inconsistencies that we were finding, and we don't ever want the policy itself to be outdated
or to contradict each other
and or contradictory. So we erred on favor of the broader language versus specificity, akin to the bullying reference to a specific contractor. So.
And it's been eye-opening. It's a lot. But thankfully we have Alicia Mallon, who's with the MMSC. She's in every one of our meetings. So she tells us, this works, or this. Sometimes she's like, I don't understand why you have this. Like you're kind of backing yourself into a corner saying we're going to about. It's not a necessary thing. So.
And she's patient with us when we're like, this is Sherborn. This is Dover.
Yeah.
This is
We keep having to say, and then we'll say to her, well, how do we put the language in there? And she looks at us like, oh, we're like, well, we have to make it reflect everybody. So what do you want us to do? So anyway, so that's your first read. If you have any questions, you can ask myself, Martha, Christine, or Colleen. We're happy to sit down and answer anything that you all may have.
Well, this is quite an undertaking. Thank you.
Now it's making more sense. But the problem is you have to revisit these every few years. And so if we can try to make it so that it's as complete as possible, there's less to change because we're always going to have to change things with technology, and there are other things that we will always have to revisit because it will always change. So if we can make the rest of it easier, it'll help committees in the future.
Well, as you can see, the most of it, they did a complete rewrite in 2010, started it in 2010, and it took 2 years to get everything approved. And then we did, there should be some updates in there that we have, because I was on the policy subcommittee at one point.
Because there was one just on this one that was like a 2022 rewrite.
Right. So that's almost when it comes upon you, you have to do it. I think we were good about that, but just not the normal review and approval. What is the time frame though? Because I think I saw this on next week's minutes, which I think is our agendas, which I think is too quick for second read. Are you going to do it at each individual meeting, the second read?
We can do it at the next one, or we can wait out another.
Well, there's a couple little things that I'm going to suggest. So I don't know. It's a lot.
Next joint.
It's a lot to look at.
Yeah.
In order for the two groups that are meeting next Tuesday, I don't know if you have time to do all this to really look at it clean.
That's fair.
And not look at your memo and everything.
Right. And the memo is like simply you'll refer back, you'll see through the strikes, because that's why I had them include the one without strikes is the clean copy of what we want it to be now. That is it. That is the document. And the other one is what we've taken out. So, and I say we wait till the next joint. And at the next joint, unfortunately, too, we'll have a first read of another one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But you're going to run into a problem if your separate committees have any changes. It's going to be so be careful about doing you can do second reads of things that you think are no-brainers.
Sure.
But in most cases like this, I think it should be at a joint.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We just need to try to get through all of them.
Right.
Or because we only have 2 more.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I will say, I do read them and rely on them a lot. So this is important work, even though it's very cumbersome and, probably, the typical Dover and Sherborn residents don't read these. I do. So.
And if you have priorities of, what you need to do, because I definitely know there's some in the financial realm, definitely student activities that has been on my list to get done.
Okay. Yeah, I think I sent those to you, the finance.
Oh, is that what you sent me and I just haven't looked at? Okay.
That was
Okay.
That's
I was afraid it was these and I didn't.
No.
I forgot. A couple of things.
No.
Okay.
This is just finance with regards to facilities. This isn't, but the finance, I did send to you.
Okay.
And that's
then I will look at that.
A lot in it.
We might need you have as a guest to that session.
And definitely.
And I mean, we've done that. So if you have anything, because I have in there's probably notes that she sent you where it says ask Dawn, ask Dawn, ask Dawn. I was like, we didn't ask Dawn.
Yeah.
So those are all.
I'll try to make it a priority.
Yeah. So that's it. Because we're going to revisit that one, and maybe that'll be the first read of the next one.
Yes.
Okay.
Give me a timeline.
Realign the schedule for our Because we have to publicly post that. We're
Yeah,
doing this.
that's what I was gonna see if y'all could have a minute after
Okay,
this.
yeah, we'll review.
Just to do the next one. Okay, so that's it. So if you all have questions, let us know. Don's gonna look through all the finance because that made my eyes cross.
Thank you for all the work on that. Now we can move to our district calendar for next year.
Okay, so believe it or not, a year ago, 2 days from now, we had that huge calendar task force presentation with students, and I went through the 65 slides from last year, and I was like, wow, that was an undertaking and very thorough. And here we are with the calendar this year. Rolling it forward, the draft is in your packet. I would like to recognize that tomorrow is Lunar New Year, and thanks to the homework guidelines that Denny and the district-based committee put together, there is no homework due tomorrow or Thursday, no assessments tomorrow or Thursday.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful.
I won't talk about the fact that my husband has tomorrow off in his district, but guess who's doing the dishes? So just looking at next year's calendar, it basically is this year replicated. I think there has been some conversation around the winter break. There was some interest in the 23rd of December being a half day. However, in going back to the 65 slides from the calendar task force, I was reminded that people like to have extra time at the beginning of that break just to make the break longer and more enjoyable, not necessarily because of the Christmas holiday. The calendar task force wanted to be clear. It wasn't favoring the Christian holiday. It was really just to have a big break of time to just sit and relax. So I would not recommend the 23rd being a half day for a number of reasons. One, because it does look like favoritism. And two, it would exclude some of our contractual units from getting a day of pay, because if it's half day, they don't come in and they would lose a day of pay. It would, be a loss of 3 hours of professional time with our teachers because they would leave at 12, and that's typically a full day of school for them. So right now, the calendar is proposed as coming to school on the 23rd, 22nd and 23rd, the Monday and Tuesday of that week, having the rest of the week, and the full next week off. That's the same thing that Weston, Wellesley, Needham, Holliston are doing. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Have we done a half day on the 23rd before? I know Thanksgiving, there's always a half day the day before.
The Thanksgiving half is built into all of our contracts. That off. Any other early releases where you let the whole staff go is not. So you are walking away from paid time. That's not prescribed. So that's something I think you should just be leery of doing.
So the second is an extra day.
The second would be an extra day, but we could come back to school for that Friday, but I can't imagine what attendance would look like.
Oh, goodness.
Was attendance tracked for this year for that Thursday and Friday?
Yeah, there was actually pretty good attendance.
Was it?
And that's the kind of the turning point. If you look at the history of calendars, if you can make 2 days in a week, then we come back. If it's only going to be 1 day, then we just take the week.
That's interesting.
So full day is Weston, Needham, Wellesley, Holliston on the 23rd. The only half day is Medfield.
Sorry, those towns you just listed have the 23rd off.
No, we have a full day.
Okay, full day.
And if you look at other calendars and you think they have the 23rd, look closely. It's only for students. Staff technically is just an early release day.
Well, staff are supposed to stay, right? We won't talk about the district that has the 23rd and 22nd off next year. He'll be doing dishes again then.
And then that's looking, if we keep all the same holidays as we've had or days off, then we're landing at June 16th.
Yes, that's without any snow days. That's 181 days of learning, because that's what we do in Dover-Sherborn. And then if we had 5 snow days, it would take us to the following week, the 24th, knowing that the 19th is Juneteenth in high school.
And is that Monday, Tuesday of that last week simply due to where the days of the week fall?
Yeah, it's just counting on 181 days of being presidents. Yeah.
Like this year, I think it's a Monday is our last day. Which is tricky.
That's when we had initially looked at one of the schedules where it was removing the Jewish holidays and Good Friday, where we actually were like a full week earlier.
That's right.
And I will always say the 181st day is beneficial to the structure. I will say I could probably count at least on one hand how many times that for when you roll over and you only have a Monday, we can say no students, but then staff come and have a day So, it definitely plays well into our flexibility to have 181 days on our calendar. I mean, that's the goal to get in, but there have been times where we've gone really long. We've got families wanting to go to camp, and so we've been able to release at least students a day early because we've got that extra.
Or when there's a carjacking in Sherborn and Pine Hill doesn't have school, they don't have to make it up.
That was crazy. I just can't even with that.
Carjacking that you witnessed.
That was Wednesday before Thanksgiving, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Have we had any feedback from the kids that were so invested in the presentation? I know that the iteration of the committee that went through that's definitely, we had recommendations. We wanted to be mindful of the challenges that were being faced. Denny, appreciate the team coming very quickly with the guidance with no homework and making sure that the teachers understand the intent of the committee's vote. Has that at all been?
So there's two pieces of it. When we debriefed as a group, and the seniors who have applied to colleges wrote about this in some of their essays about the learning that they kind of came full circle from wanting to have all of these days off, then doing all the research and looking at the data and getting input from stakeholders and landing in a different place at the end of the process. So I think they understand it, that it was thorough and that it made sense at the end of the day what the committee decided. And then in terms of whether or not the no homework and no assessment days are working, your plan is this spring, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had some of the students that carried over from the calendar committee to the work committee that we worked on. So they felt like they got to have their voice represented in that. And then I think we're just waiting until after Eid to reconvene and then to assess how things went.
Great.
I happened to run into one of the student members of the calendar committee at a chorus performance, and we recognized each other across the room, and we were like, "Hello, how are you?" And I'm like, "You're taller than you were." And my husband was like, "How do you know that junior high schooler or whatever?" And I was like, "We were on a committee together," and it was just like a lovely moment, and just again a reminder of how thoughtful our kids are.
Mm-hmm.
And this is for really getting us the bookends of the full days off. I don't see any of the professional development.
Right, that will be the
happening in
next
there.
stage.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Do we need to take a vote
Yes.
on this right now?
Unless there's something you want to change.
Any changes or further questions? Okay. Can I have the region take a vote? We have to do this individual.
Yeah.
Can I have the region take a vote?
Sure. Can members of the region vote to approve the 2025-2026 school year calendar for Dover-Sherborn? All right, Colin Burt. Have a second?
Second. Kevin Crowdy.
Kevin Crowdy, second. All right. All in favor? And we're all here. I mean, we're at 6.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Christine, can I get a Pine Hill?
Can I have a motion to approve the 2025 to 2026 calendar as described at this meeting?
Becca Hammond, so moved.
Thank you, Becca.
Nathan Yella, second.
Thank you, Mega. Kristen Aberle.
Yeah, you have to vote.
Yeah, Kristen Aberle. How do you vote on this?
Kristen Amberly, yes.
Thank you. Christine Walsh, yes.
Becca Hammond, yes.
Nathan Yella, yes.
Okay. And now for the Dover, do I have a motion to approve the calendars presented? Thank you, Goalie. A second?
Martha Cass is seconded.
All in favor? All right. Everybody?
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for that. Next action item, we have an amendment to tech collaboration agreement.
So as you know, we belong to two collaboratives where we do send our students who need a specific support or cohort to be with, the Tech Collaborative and the Accept Collaborative. For those of you who were on the committee last year, remember the Accept Collaborative and welcomed Westboro to join. This year, the Tech Collaborative has two requests, one from King Philip Regional Schools and the other from Sharon Public Schools to join the collaborative. In order to make that happen, they have to amend their agreement. And while I am your representative to that collaborative, you are the supporting members. In looking at the pros and cons, it's additional students to create more robust cohorts. It's a greater network of professional development opportunities for those of us who do job alikes through them. It's greater buying power when we go together to get bids. I think the only negative is that there would be fewer districts, King Philip Regional and Sharon being the two, paying non-member prices. But Emily Parks, the director of the Tech Collaborative, who was formerly the superintendent in Westwood, is an incredible leader, and she has done so much to build the program. I don't think losing a little bit of money in member district tuition is going to make a big difference. I think the pros far outweigh the cons. So I would recommend that you consider amending the agreement.
Can you explain to me the bid process and like what they're bidding? Right.
So we do a lot of our supply purchasing. So we do, as a collaborative, we go out and we bid all of our school supplies. So our pallets of paper, our pencils. So we all go together, and with the volume that all of our districts buy together, we get better pricing. I get from Dover, you guys always hear me talk about tech. I go with other member districts and do our oil bid for our heating oil. So there's many opportunities for us to go in and do collaborative bidding with a larger pool of volume or with groups. So that's another benefit of the tech, is it really is heavy into the purchasing.
Just economies of scale for
Yep. And you have to be, so non-members but you pay a fee. All of our food services, all of our food supplies is through tech bid. So you'll hear us talk about tech bids if you're in the buildings, like go buy that on the tech bid, go buy that on the tech bid.
And it's not TECH, it's TEC.
Yeah.
King Philip's currently a non-member.
Right.
So by incorporating them,
You're going to get more volume of stuff that you can buy, so to make your pricing go down. Right.
Thank you. Yes, I was like the whole mechanism.
Also, committee? All right.
Yeah.
May I have a motion to approve an amendment to the Tech Collaborative Agreement that allows King Philip Regional and Sharon Public School Systems to become members of the Tech Collaborative?
Motion approved.
Kevin Cross, thank you. Any second? Colleen Burt, second. Thank you. All in favor?
Christine?
Could I please have a motion to approve the tech agreement as amended this evening to include King Philip and Sharon?
Becca Hammond, so moved.
Thank you, Becca.
Gabriella, second.
Thank you so much, Mega. Could I have a roll call? Kristen Aberle, how do you vote?
Kristen Aberle, yes.
Thank you so much.
Becca Hammond, yes.
Thank you.
Gabriella, yes.
Thank you. Christine Walsh, yes.
Okay, and now for Dover, can I have a motion to approve the amendment? Thank you, Goldie. Second?
Podcast seconded.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay. So all committees have approved.
Thank you.
Now we have one consent item. We have the approval of joint school committee meeting minutes from September 10th, 2024. You good to go for every individual committees?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Region?
All right.
You're almost there.
I know. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the joint school committee meeting from September 10th, 2024?
Andrew Johnson, so.
Andrew Johnson, thank you. Any seconds?
Kevin Grady, second.
Kevin Grady, thank you. All in favor?
Christine for Sherburne?
Yes, could I please have a motion to approve the minutes from our joint committee meeting dated September 10, 2024?
Becca Hammond, so moved.
Thank you, Becca. May I have a second?
Gabriella, second.
Thank you, Mega. Kristen Aberle, how do you vote?
Kristen Aberle, yes.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Becca Hammond?
Becca Hammond, yes.
Thank you.
Gabriella, yes.
Thank you. Christine Walsh, yes. So moved. Thank you.
Thank you. And now from the Dover School Committee, do I have a motion to approve the joint school committee meeting minutes?
Martha Castle, so moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor? Okay. The minutes have been approved. Moving forward here, we have a few informational items that are in the packet. So we do have the summary of proposed 2026 budgets. We have the more detailed challenge success survey results as presented earlier. And then we do have the accept and tech annual and quarterly reports as part of the packet as well. And do I have any current items that people want to put on the April 1st, 2025 meeting?
We'll do the second read of the
Second read
policies.
of the policies.
Yes.
Read of policies and first read of something else you mentioned.
Yeah, we'll know we're gonna get it done about finance. That won't be a long one.
Okay.
I'll give an update on goals and then you'll launch into the evaluation process.
Yes. And already sent Diane an email telling her to take the second read off of all of our calendars and put it on the joint.
Thank you.
Great. Very efficient.
Before I forget.
And then just also, I know we keep on seeing a lot of executive orders on the federal level, expecting more implementation regulations coming down the pipeline. So keeping that on as an agenda item. Also wondering if there's any dependency on like Department of Education grants and the like.
Yeah, they're saying we're not going to be impacted because of the timing of those grants. So luckily we're not totally largely dependent on grants, but I've been getting the same emails and updates from MASBO, and there's a feeling that the money that we're expecting this year is in the pipeline. School lunches, the federal piece might be something that could be a hiccup, but remember ours is predominantly state. Our universal free lunch is state funded. Only the free and reduced is federally. So
we'll
that's
keep
a
that.
small impact there versus first year of COVID it was federal.
Thank you.
But now it's state. So we are looking at that, but don't anticipate any issues at this point in time.
Great. And do guidelines primarily, do the Massachusetts DESE guidelines primarily supersede executive orders coming from the federal Department of Education? Do we not know yet? To be determined?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the areas that we have to continue to watch as well. A lot of the laws governing us as a Massachusetts school district are going to be state-based. They are, but there are hooks such as
So DESE gets the money. Our grants comes from the federal, and then they
So depending on what those are tied to and
Yeah.
behaviors that
Exactly
the
right.
state takes and all that.
Right.
I'm happy to bring disaggregated data relative to sleep and the challenge success information too. And just on that note, it popped into my head thinking back to last week's superintendent meeting. They mentioned the legislation potentially coming around cell phone bans. There's also legislation coming potentially in Massachusetts for all middle and high schools to have a later start time.
Yeah.
So we're ahead
I'm
of
sorry,
her.
a what?
A later start time.
Later start time, okay.
That's great.
And then the superintendent said, well, which one should we tackle first? They're like, check, we got both done.
All right. Okay, we need to do individual roll calls for adjournment, or?
You can probably just do it through the.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Becca Hammond, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Christine Walsh, second.
All right, thank you.
Sherman wants to go home.
All in favor?
Well, just remember those short meetings we just had that were like.
So I call this meeting to an end at 9:17 p.m.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
Hi, Kristen.
Bye.